Well, I mean, a fairly decent agenda. We do have a lot of participants already on the phone. We've got about 14. So we have a little longer meeting than normal. We'll see. All right.
Joe, do you know if Joey and Doug Smith, then their attorney, met with the homeowners association?
They did. I think they said about 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure if it was Zoom or in person, but they did meet.
It is 6 o'clock, so I'm going to get us started here. Keep us on time, and maybe we can finish on time, or maybe a little early if we're lucky. So I will call to order a special meeting, Georgetown-Scott County Planning Commission for February 11, 2021. It's officially 6 p.m. I will start under item number 1, commission business. Item A is approval of the January invoices. So hopefully, as a commission, you've looked at it. I'll need a motion.
I make a motion.
So motion by Mrs. Mizell.
I'll second it.
And a second by, I didn't hear who that was. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
Who was it?
Second by Stephen, Mr. Smith.
By Mr. Smith. By Steve. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passes. Under B, approval of the January 14th, 2021 minutes. So if you haven't hopefully read it, if there's any changes. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So Mr. Chair.
I got a motion by Mr. Stone,
Second.
a second by Mr. Mifflin. All in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the February agenda. Joe, Kane, is there any changes?
No changes.
Okay, so no changes. So as it stands, I need a motion to approve the February agenda.
So moved, Mr. Smith.
A motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mr. Stone. All in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Items for postponement or withdrawal. So I do see one, which is FSP 2020-49, the Bolton property. That one is being postponed. So if you're here to hear that one will not be heard tonight. Is there anything else, Mr. Kane, that's being postponed other than the Bolton property?
No, sir, that is it.
Okay, so I don't think we need a motion. And then consent agenda. We have several that are consent eligible. I guess we'll go one at a time, and jokes, I think I marked them right, but if I didn't, please correct me. The Wireman Philowyatt property, FSP 2020. Matt, I can't even see. Oh, that's Mary. Mary, would you do me a favor and mute your sound? Or if you sound like you. Is Singer? I think that, Matt, or if you can mute her, that'd be great. And then if she wants to speak, she can raise. Oh, there's somebody did. Thanks. Sorry, FSP 2020-46, the Wireman and Philowyatt property. Final subdivision plat to subdivide a parent tract of approximately 20.6 acres into two 10-acre tracts located west side of Long Lick Pike, north of Skinnersburg Road. That is consent eligible, Mr. Kane, correct?
Correct.
So as long as there's no one here, and I'll look at the participants. If there's no one here to speak against this or wants to hear it, this is consent eligible. I think we'll just run through them one at a time. And if there's anybody, so anybody who is an attendee, if you want to hear this applicant, or especially if you're opposed to it, please click and raise your hand at the very bottom of the screen. Katerina Middlefort. Matt, if you don't mind unmuting Katerina. Oh, for Mrs. Katerina, would you be able to unmute? There you go. I think we should hear.
I just would like to hear this one because I live nearby and I don't know about it. I'm not opposed, but if somebody could summarize, or I'm
Okay.
not sure how this works.
Well, yeah, what we'll do then, a lot of times if you had questions ahead of time, we ask that you ask the commission, or not the commission, call planning and zoning, but seeing that you live there, we'll hear it. That's no problem. So what we'll do then is we'll move on to the next consent eligible one. And then we'll circle back around and we'll get to hear Wireman Philo Wyatt property. And that's how that works. So hang tight. Next one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next one that's consent eligible, is it the Simply Southern? No, that one was not consent eligible. Correct, Joe?
I believe you're correct, Matt. Can you verify?
Yeah, that's correct. There's variances with that one.
Okay, so that one, the next one that is consent eligible, and that's where I marked it too many times, is FSP 2021-02, Team CEO LLC, final subdivision plat, subdivide 30.686 acre parcel into 2 lots located on Coleman Lane. So that one is consent eligible.
Correct.
Yep, I was gonna say there's no. Okay, so is there anybody on the line that wants to hear a team CEO or is opposed to team CEO? And we'll give it a minute to be fair to everybody in case we don't want to miss anybody.
I did have somebody call in the office today asking about that one. I'm not sure if it was a neighbor or an applicant.
Okay. Do you feel like you answered their questions?
He just wanted the passcode.
Oh, okay. So if he or she is on the phone, if they do have any questions, we'll be happy to hear it. Otherwise, I'll give it probably another 30 seconds or so, and we'll see if we want to vote this as approve it as a consent item. Matt, if you want to unmute Mary just in case. And then Mary, we had a lot of background sound. I don't know if you had your radio on or window open or something, but it was really, really loud. In all fairness to Mary, I want to make sure that she's not muted for the whole meeting. Thank you, Matt, if you did that, or Mary. All right, looks like we don't have anybody.
Can you hear me, Mark? I'm driving right now, actually. I'm in Knoxville. So I think
No
I didn't have my phone on mute, but I'm going to keep it on mute unless I'm talking. Sorry.
I appreciate that. We could hear all the background music.
Sorry,
So,
I'm on the interstate right now, so that's what it was. Sorry.
I'm very careful. It's scary out
I
there.
will. I know. Oh.
Appreciate you. So saying that we have nobody who spoke against this applicant, I need to entertain a motion to approve consent. This is the FSP 2021-02 Team CEO LLC.
I make a motion.
We got a motion by Mrs. Mizell
I'll second it.
and a second by Mr. Stone. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, gets approved. Next one on the consent agenda, let me make sure, instead of me guessing, is FSP 2021-03 Stone Lane Development, final subdivision plat to subdivide 176 acres into 10 lots located on Stone Lane, Kentucky 356. So is there anybody here who wants to hear this or is against this applicant? And if not, again, we'll give it a couple minutes and and that one's consent eligible as well. Okay, we've got Mrs. Kayla Dunaway, if I pronounce that right, and Carl Myers. Matt, did you want to unmute one at a time? Mrs. Dunaway?
Actually, this is her dad.
Oh, yep. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask about if there is any requirements on the subdivision yet. There are several that are neighbors to it, the property that we was not want our property value brought down by development of this.
So Joe, do you want to answer it really quick or do you think we should hear the whole applicant? Joe, Kane?
I think we should go ahead and hear it.
Yeah, we'll do that, sir. And it looks like Mr. Myers and David Inyart is also have their hand up. So what we'll do is instead of it being voted consent, we'll hear the whole application. This way we'll answer a bunch of questions through the process. How's that sound?
Okay, thank you.
All right, appreciate you. Next one on there is no, that's the last one that's consent eligible. Yep, because Fall Creek isn't consent eligible, and I see a lot of people on here for it, so I won't even ask. Well, then I guess we'll jump right back up to the top, and we'll hear the FSP 2020-46, the Wireman and Phila Wyatt property final subdivision plat to subdivide a parent tract approximately 20.6 acres into two 10+ acre tracts located west side of Long Lick Pike, north of Skinnersburg Road.
Okay,
Yours?
this is my project. I'll go through the staff report quickly. This is a 20-acre piece of property zoned A1 on Long Lake Pike on the west side of the road, north of Skinnersburg Road. This property was previously split off the farm after 99, I believe. So that's why it's coming before the Planning Commission. It's a long, narrow tract. They're splitting it in half, basically, to create two 10+ acre tracts. They will share an access. The tract in the rear will not have any frontage, so they'll share the driveway cut, and there'll be an access easement across the front of the lot to reach the rear lot. Both lots meet our minimum lot size, width, and can get building area with 50-foot setback, so they meet all our A1 requirements. We allow tracts to be created without frontage if they have access, and this one does, but the access can serve no more than 3 tracts, and this access will only serve the rear tract and the front tract. So only serving 2, so that also meets our requirements. So we are recommending approval. And you can see the aerial there. It's on the west side of Long Lick. And this, you can see the subdivision, the yellow track, obviously is the front where the access easement will cross. The only thing we require with access easements is that there be a shared maintenance agreement for the shared driveway and access easement, and that needs to show on the plat, on the final plat, and be signed by all the users of the access, and they've included that language on the plat. So it meets all our requirements. We are recommending approval. You're muted, Mark.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Does any the commissioners have any questions for Joe?
No.
Mrs. Middlefort, if I pronounce that right, does that answer all of your questions?
Yes,
Joe?
all set. Thank you very much. Sorry, they were unmuting me.
No.
But thank you very much. That answers my questions. I don't have any issue. I just wanted to hear what was happening. Thank you.
No, we appreciate you coming and wanting to hear this. That's what we're for.
Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. If there's no other questions by anybody in the crowd or the commission, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve FSP 2020-46 and the 5 conditions attached to it.
Okay, so I got a motion by Mr. Smith.
I second.
Got heard a second by Mrs. Mizell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Next on here is the Simply Southern Properties. So it's FSP 2021-01 final subdivision plat to subdivide a 0.7 acre parcel into 4 lots. Actually, I think it's 3 lots with access from Hickman Street and Martin Luther Jr. Drive. And Matt, this is yours, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, as you mentioned, the project site is located roughly at the corner of Hickman Hickman Street and Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. Although it doesn't include the properties right at the corner, as we'll see. The property is zoned R2. It's our medium density residential zoning district. All of the surrounding properties have the same zoning, and the acreage of the site is a little over 3/4 of an acre. Access to the lots that the applicant is proposing would be from both Hickman Street and MLK Junior Drive. And there are 2 variances that are being requested with this application. Variances to the minimum lot size for 2 of the lots, and then variances to the minimum lot width for 3 of the lots.
And originally I did read 4, but it's truly only 3 lots.
Yes. I wrote the staff report based on what the applicant had originally applied for. So as you can see here on the aerial photo, this outlined in blue is the area of the project site. You've got Hickman Street here on the north, MLK Junior Drive here on the west side. So it's a predominantly residential area. And as you can see, there are a variety of lot sizes and shapes. Some lots are narrow and very deep. Some lots are very small. This is a copy of the plat showing what the applicant had originally applied for. Originally, they had applied for 4 lots. As we discussed some at workshop, after reviewing the plat and in discussion with the fire department and the water and sewer service providers, we did talk to the applicant about not platting lot 4. Basically, it would have had this awkward access off of Hickman Street back to a lot that would have sat really in the center of a block, which I didn't think would work out well for anyone from a livability standpoint. The water and sewer company, as well as the fire department, had other issues with it, but the applicant did agree to sort of scale back their application to 3 lots. This is roughly what I imagine the end result will be, although some of the finer details as far as what to do with this area back here is really up to the applicant. So as long as they're not creating any new lots, it doesn't matter to me whether or not this area back here is part of the lot 1 that they create. It may be that they end up consolidating it with lots 301 and 305, which the applicant also owns, or that they may try to sell it to one of the neighboring property owners for consolidation. But the main point is that the applicant has agreed to scale back the application to 3 lots that would each have a single house. Each lot would have street frontage on either Hickman or Martin Luther King Jr. Drive that can be served by water, sewer, and the fire department. So I am recommending approval of their application. They did, as I mentioned before, they requested variances, and some of these, depending on their final configuration, they may not need some of these, but I'm okay with the variances that they requested, just in case they do end up needing them. So, for example, they requested a reduction in the minimum lot size for lots 1 and 2. Under their original configuration, they were slightly undersized, but that's well within the character of many of the lots in the area, as we saw from the aerial photo. They also requested a reduction in the minimum lot widths. And once again, I'm recommending approval of that as well. The 50 feet and 53 feet minimum lot widths are also well within the character of the area. There's a variety of lot sizes in this older part of town. So I think that allowing for some reduction there would allow the lots just to fit in with the overall character. I am recommending approval with the 5 conditions listed. The first 4 really are standard conditions that we would include with just about every application. The 5th being that just a clarification that lot 4, or the area that they had originally proposed as lot 4, should just be consolidated with other lots and should not be created as a standalone lot itself. And that's all that I had.
Thank you, Matt. Any commissioners have any questions for Matthew or Kent? All right, then I guess we'll open it up to public comment. Is there anybody on the line that would like to speak against this applicant or need questions answered?
I unmuted Joel Day. He's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Okay. please. Mr. Day, Mr. Perkins is going to swear you in. Charlie, would you do the pleasure of swearing Mr.
Yeah.
Day?
Joel, are you there?
I'm here, Charlie.
Would you raise your right hand, please?
Yes, sir.
Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give is the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Day. The floor is yours, sir.
Oh, me?
Yes,
Yeah, I spoke with Mr. Mayhall, the owner, today, and he's fine with the reduction to 3. Just I think Matt covered it very well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the community, commissioners? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
There's not anybody else to speak from. All right.
We can give it about 30 seconds just to make sure, because I'd hate to miss anybody. But I'm not seeing any hands up yet. Anybody else? Again, if you want to speak against or even in favor of this, at the very bottom of your screen, there's a yellow hand. You got to click raise hand. And if you do that, Matt Summers will unmute you to speak after you're sworn in by Mr. Perkins. And there is instructions right there of how to raise your hand to speak on the screen. So if you can see the screen. All right, give it a few more seconds and we'll entertain a motion. All right, doesn't look like anybody's here. Anybody else is here to speak again or on our behalf or against. So I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of SP 2021-01 with the variances and conditions that the staff put on this.
So I got a motion by Mr. Mifflin,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next one is the Stone, FSP 2021-03, Stone Lane Development, final subdivision plat to subdivide 176 acres into 10 lots located on Stone Lane, Kentucky Highway 356. I think, Matt, this is yours again, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, and as you mentioned, the application, the project site is located on Stone Lane. This project site is zoned agricultural, which as is all of the surrounding property. It is 176 acres roughly, as you mentioned, and all proposed accesses for the site and the proposed lots are proposed from Stone Lane as well. There are no variances that are proposed with this application. The aerial photo you can see here, you've got Cincinnati Pike off to the west, and Stone Lane is kind of winds through here at the bottom of the screen. Now, roughly speaking, the area of the project site is this cleared area. It's not 100% accurate that it follows the cleared area, but roughly it is the cleared area that you see there on the screen. So this is a copy of the plat that the applicant is proposing to subdivide the 176 acres into 10 lots. All of the proposed lots meet our minimum size requirements. They meet our minimum lot width requirements to have building area, and all of the proposed lots have sufficient access that meet our requirements as well. The applicant has already spoken with the transportation cabinet and gotten all of their proposed entrances approved by the transportation cabinet. If you recall, in the staff report, really the only issue that I raised that might need changing, I guess, surrounds this access easement here. The access easement is intended to serve tracts 4, 3, and 5 here in the back. And I've spoken with the applicant several times since our workshop meeting, and I think that we've gotten that issue clarified. They have removed the access easement entirely from tract 2. And the only easement that will be on track 2 will be a utility easement, and we have no issue with utility easement serving however many lots. So the access easement will basically be 20 feet wide here along track 4 until it gets towards the back. I am recommending approval of this application to subdivide the project site into 10 lots with the 5 conditions of approval that are listed there on the screen. There are no, as I mentioned before, no variances requested with this application.
Thank you, Matt. We'll open it up to the commissioners. Commissioners have any comments or questions? If not, I will open it up to the applicant, either Big Pine Land or Pat McLafferty, if they're on this call.
Hi there. This is Alicia Prokos. I'm with the applicant, Big Pine Land.
Need to swear in.
Oh, yes, Charlie. Yep, please, Miss. Thank you, Mr. Mifflin.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear affirm the statement you're about to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, first I want to thank all of you, especially Matt Summers, because this is our first time going through this process, and it's been pretty smooth, and I just want to thank you all for your help. So thank you, Matt. As far as the development, I think the plat speaks for itself. It consists of 10 residential tracts on 176 acres, and they're all along the northern side of Stone Lane in Sadieville. All the tracts have their own entrance, except for tracts 3, 4, and 5, which share a driveway because lot 3 and lot 5 do not have road frontage. As Matt said, we have addressed the issue raised by the commission that the shared driveway access easement should not lie on lot 2. So we've moved that and taken care of that issue. There is a utility easement also, and Matt mentioned that as well, and that will now be up the side of track 2, 3, and 5, a 20-foot utility easement. Let's see, I have spoken to some of the neighbors on Stone Lane as a result of our mailed notification. And the issues that I've heard in large part concern the building restrictions that we would carry with the lot. I can say that the lots will carry restrictions that will be in keeping with the high quality and rural charm of the area that attracted us to it in the first place. And the lots do range in size from roughly 7 is the smallest to 52 acres. And only one single family residence will be allowed per lot per the regulations. So the density will most definitely be in keeping with that which exists today along this stretch of Stone Lane. All the homes must have permanent concrete foundations, and they must be a minimum of 1,500 square feet. That's in our restrictions. And this has come up a lot on the phone. We have decided we will not be allowing manufactured or mobile homes of any type, single or double wide. Residents on the lots will be able to raise a limited number of animals just for domestic purposes, not commercial. I think those are the big things with which people had concerns. If people have more detailed concerns, I can address them, but that's the mainstay of it. Thank you.
Mark, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Does any of the commissioners have questions for Mrs. Prokos? Otherwise, we'll open it up to, I see a couple hands in the audience, the attendees. The only question I think that you didn't address that I have is the cemetery.
Oh, okay. The cemetery, we have talked to various parties who have knowledge of the cemetery. It has not been in use for some time, since the mid 1800s. When you are even standing in front of it, you can't really see it. There are no headstones. In the past, the person that we bought the land from did not have any restrictions on that area. However, they did choose to keep it free of any building or utilities or easements or anything like that. That is pretty much what we are suggesting that we should do. Just leave it as is and not attempt to move the graves or anything of that nature.
Would there be a way, or Charlie, do you think we as a community could ask to have it, I don't know how you would do that, fenced in or some way just to make sure that it doesn't get disturbed, out of respect for the deceased? I mean, is there a protocol?
But that's not in our ordinance.
Okay, my biggest thing is, out of respect. Again, I know we've had other grave sites at other properties, and I think one, if I remember correctly, I'm not sure if we required them to move it, and they moved it to the Georgetown Cemetery. And I'm trying to remember that was the units off of Connector Road.
That was the warehouses.
That was the warehouses. So they were going to build around it. The alternative was either build around it. I thought we did require them to either fence it off or something, or move it, and they chose to move it.
Well, and they were going to develop basically all around that. So that's, even at that though, we don't have that in the ordinance.
Okay.
But on this one, where it's just an ag tract, and we could certainly put that in there.
Well, because the driveway ends right, basically, if you look at the map, the driveway ends right where the I call it a cemetery is. So, you know what I'm saying? It's right at the end of the driveway. It's just kind of weird.
Well, actually, the topography of the area is such that the shared driveway that goes up back toward Lot 5 and the cemetery, it's on a ridge. So that actually is kind of the same passway, if you will, that our surveyor, Pat McLafferty, was able to uncover at, I guess it was the courthouse, in old records. He was able to find an old record of a footpath that went up there. So it's kind of been at the end of a footpath for a really long time. We would be happy to do whatever you think is in the best interest for relatives that may appear, or for historical or research purposes. We're just not quite sure what to do.
Right.
I did call the coroner a couple of times, and I was not able to get a hold of him or her. So that's
Yeah, my thing is, again, walking path could have been a walking path for the last 170 years to visit those graves. That's never a problem there. But to have a driveway that either dead ends into that cemetery, that's just my concern, is if there's a cemetery.
Mr. Chairman, if I might suggest, some counties, I understand, have a county cemetery board. I don't know that we do. Perhaps we add a condition simply that the applicant complies with all applicable regulations concerning preservation or protection of the cemetery. Then maybe we can do a little research and see if in fact there's something else there.
Would you be okay with that, Mrs. Prokos?
Yes, we would.
Because, again, that's kind of weird that you couldn't get a hold of the coroner, because he can be pretty easy to get a hold of. But I would definitely like to see something added. Probably, I guess it would be condition number 6 to protect that cemetery, again, for the respect. And I think you said you tried to do some family gene tree and couldn't really find anybody or any thing. And again, we're talking 170 years old graves, so yeah, it'd probably be pretty hard to find.
Yeah, I just did receive a note here that it is at least 100 feet off the end of the road. It's not directly in the pathway.
Okay, well, that helps a little bit, sure. But Charlie, how would you word that condition number 6?
I think I would try to keep it simple if that's possible for me. Applicant will comply with all applicable regulations concerning the old cemetery located on the property. And then we'll do a little research and see if in fact there are any applicable regulations.
Appreciate that, Charlie. All right, anything else? Do you have anything else for us, Mrs. Prokos, or the commissioner's questions of Mrs. Prokos? Otherwise, I think there's a Tom Cheek. If Matt, if you don't mind unmuting Mr. Cheek, and it looks like a couple other hands have gone up, and we'll do one at a time, and Mr. Perkins will swear you in. So we'll start with Mr. Cheek first.
Okay.
Mr. Cheek, do you swear affirm the statement? Excuse me, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear affirm the statement you're about to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Floor is yours, Mr. Cheek.
Okay. I am the neighbor to the northeast, Long Lake Farm. I own about 140 acres adjacent on the northeast. One of the things I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this is a planning commission thing or something that I need to work out with the developer, but there's a nice fence that Walter Stone and I put up that I would like to get some kind of a maintenance agreement with the new property owner on. Is that something that I would need to address with the planning commission or get that on the development plan?
Mr. Perkins, you want to answer that question?
Well, state law covers the obligations of private fences.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, we don't get into that. I don't believe in, and Matt or Joe can correct me, unless it is a specific type of use out in the A1, such as a cluster. I don't think we do that on a so-called 5-acre tract development.
So would I have to? So I would have to deal with each individual landowner, I guess, as that happened, right?
Yes.
Ultimately, that may actually be what happened, simply because there may not be uses until they're the ultimate owners by which to guide the courts, if in fact the courts ultimately get involved in just what those responsibilities should be. I apologize, but I haven't dealt with a private agricultural fence obligation in quite a few years, so I can't be any more specific than I am.
Well, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, the rules as Walter and I understood it is that basically he was responsible for 50% of it, and I was responsible for 50%, both costs of the fence and maintenance.
And I think that is traditionally how it's been. It's my understanding there have been some changes in recent years, and that's what I'm not. But you're right. Traditionally, it's simply been you take the right half, your neighbor takes their right half, and you split the cost and materials and so on. It just seems like to me that I've been told that there's more to it these days. It's a little more fine-tuned, if you will.
But that go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, Mr. Cheek, it's something that we can work with you to build into I don't know if I want to say deed, but help you maneuver that with each of the new landowners. A 50-50 agreement, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, that would be good, because that is it was a difficult area to fence. A lot of it was, and it requires some maintenance. So any help I can get with that would be much appreciated. The other concern that I have is really relates to surface runoff. and I'm not too concerned. The only real track that has any significant runoff is track 1 and 2. There's a little bit on track 5, but that's my only concern. I have a lake on my property, and those properties contribute to, or are within the watershed. So I like to, and as I said, I probably would rather have it be residential than cattle. But either way, I don't think it'll have any impact either way, particularly with one residential property per tract, and that would relate to sewage. And I'm assuming these are just going to be septic fields. Is that correct?
Yes, the Department of Health has been out to all 10 of the lots, and they've been approved for a lagoon system septic.
Yeah. The land does not perk. I mean, it really is tough. But anyway, but that's really my only concern. And honestly, the little bit of area that I'm worried about, I'm not. But as I said, maybe as we go down the road, if you will, just kind of keep me posted as property begin, as you get ready to kind of transfer the property, and let me, make sure that, that I'm able to, get some kind of an understanding or an agreement with the new owners.
Sure.
All right,
No
thank you,
problem.
Mr. Cheek. It looks like we have several other hands raised, so we'll just go right in order.
Okay, thank you.
Myers, thank you. Carl Myers. And again, Charlie, would you swear Mr. Myers in?
Yes, sir. Mr. Myers,
Yes.
would you raise your right hand, please?
Yes.
You swear or affirm the statement you're about to give to be the truth to the best of your information and belief.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
I have a general question. We live down the road on Kentucky Highway 356, and the road there is already in fairly poor condition, and we have just concerns about adding the additional 10 lots along with all the construction that's going on there. Is there any thoughts into improving that road and along that track, along the subdivision that is going in?
Matt, do you want to answer that?
It's a state highway. As far as I know, there have been, no redesign or reconstruction projects included in the transportation cabinet's highway plan.
So generally, what that means is generally the state is the one that would fix or improve on a road. And Charlie, that is who really approaches that? The residents, correct?
Well, that is a state highway.
So, I mean, as a resident, Mr. Myers, you can reach out to the state and make phone calls to the Department of Highway or Transportation.
That'd be what, District 7, I assume.
District 7, correct. And let them know your concerns, because again, if a road's in a bad condition, shape, needs repairs, they're required to maintain those roads.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like next is David Inyart, if I pronounce that right. Matt, would you unmute David Inyart?
Hey, Mark.
How you doing, David? Charlie, would you swear Mr. Inyart in?
Yes, sir. Mr. Inyart, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. I'm on the north side of the properties. I guess I'm backing up to track 5. I think Tom had hit on a couple of my questions regarding fencing, and is that something that will remain in place, or is that something that's going to be planned on being taken down? How would that be handled? And it sounds like I would be directing my questions to Pine.
Yes. Hello there. As far as the external fencing on the property, we don't currently have any plans to remove it. No. And I think the suggestion that Mr. Cheek made was a good one to, address the ongoing maintenance of it. So we're amenable to that on your side, obviously, as well.
Okay. I mean, the main curiosity was if, that's going to remain, or if, someone else comes in and purchases that property, are they, able to remove this, or, it's kind of a concern at this point. So.
Well, we could put it into the deed, which we can discuss with you.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with, dictating that the fencing remain.
Okay. I had left you a couple messages because I was going to try to reach out to you and have some discussion about that prior to this call, but we never connected. So.
Oh, really? I didn't get them.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem. We'll maybe we can try again.
Okay.
Some other questions were, I mean, it sounds like 1,500 square feet is the minimum with a full flat foundation under these homes that you're putting in. Is there going to be any type of HOA or anything surrounding these, or is there, restrictions around what can happen, what can be done on these properties?
There is about a 2-page set of restrictions, but there will not be an ongoing HOA. As far as maintaining the restrictions, right now, the legal language we have is that they will be in force for 30 years. And then there's an ability on the part of 50% of the landowners or the lot owners, if they want to amend it at some later date, they could, but I wouldn't expect that they would, because these are all meant to preserve their real estate value and equity stake in the properties and the neighborhood. I can forward to you our latest statement of restrictions. It's as I said, things like, you can't have garbage on your lot, and no commercial activity. You can't, I mean, it's a myriad of things, but let me see what else. The dwellings, for instance, the construction, you have to stay in compliance with the Scott County regulations, which is, a 50-foot setback from the road. Let's see, you can't, once you begin construction and that's approved, you need to complete it within 12 months. You can't keep construction materials on the property for more than 90 days without pre-approval. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean,
those are the mainstay of them. They're not outlandishly, strict. They allow people to have animals at a maximum of 1 per acre, like a horse or cattle. And I would say that, the most strict thing we have is that we are not allowing mobile or manufactured housing, which is pretty major in our minds.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, those are some of the concerns. Again, I mean, this is a piece of property that I've had for, over 10 years, 12 years. And, it was purchased for a farm activity, and, to get the notice that we've got residential moving in, right on the back of us was not, something that we were thrilled about, to be honest with you. So just trying to, clarify and understand, what's going in and how it's going to be, maintained and positioned. So, which I'm sure a lot of everybody else has got some of the same concerns. So,
yeah, I mean, I would say that the density will be no different than exists today. I mean, in that area, I guess backing up to your particular property, you may see that differently, but, it's possible that it could enhance your land value, honestly. So.
And Tom mentioned on the runoff, from this property, I'm not sure how many people have been out there, but this is, substantially everything runs down. There's a creek that comes down through the property.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, I'm not really sure how lagoons or septics or things like that work, but I mean, I'm assuming everything has to be taken care of by EPA or whoever else from around sewerage and things along those lines. But the majority of that runoff on this property comes right down that creek.
Matt or
So-
Ben, would you want to answer that question at all? Or touch base on it a little bit?
The health department approves the sites of all the lagoons and septic fields.
But
Matt, could you put that aerial shot back up instead of the flat shot? Yeah, thank you.
So for you all that haven't been there, this all pretty much runs, these are all pretty steep hillsides here, and it all pretty much runs down, for the most part, down the middle of that creek area there. There's a creek that runs down the middle of the property, which, you know, and I think there's a name on that on the creek, but, you know, it all kind of flows down that way. So everything that comes off those hills kind of runs either over towards Tom or through my property.
Okay, well, as far as I know, there's no runoff with any lagoon system. And
Okay.
we've also, you know, we're attending to putting in culverts at the road with all the entrances, and, you know, drainage is definitely something we're attending to per all the regulations. And, you know, we want it to be a high quality, you know, development with no runoff or drainage issues.
Sure.
So, you know, that's, I guess, the most I can say. Yeah.
Hopefully, does that answer everybody? Well, Mr. Inyard's question?
Yes.
Thank you. I guess we'll move on to it looks like Doug Corrigan. Matt, would you mind unmuting Mr. Corrigan? And Charlie, would you swear Mr. Corrigan in?
Yes, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to make to be the truth, to the best of your information and belief?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate this time. This question maybe is more for the commission first before we talk to the applicant. So the applicant has indicated that there are a number of proposed restrictions on property usage, construction, and so forth. My question is, from a legal standpoint, these are proposed at this point. Is bringing these before this planning commission in a public setting make them legally obligated to publish and follow the proposed restrictions? And if so, does the commission require that those restrictions be sent to them for review and or approval before the final answer is given to the applicant?
I think I'll let our legal counsel answer that. Mr. Perkins?
Yeah, let me hear that question again, because it took a turn on me in the middle and I wasn't quite sure where it went. So
I'll simplify my question. Right now, the applicant has done a good job of explaining proposed conditions and usages for the property, but that's just conversation at a public meeting. Is there a legal requirement for these proposed restrictions to be published, reviewed, and any concerns brought up before final answer is given to the applicant? And are they legally required then to follow on the published restrictions? Or is this just a public proposal at this point?
There's actually a couple of variations on your question. There are some things that we require. For example, the maintenance agreement for lots, I think it's 3, 4, and 5 on their joint drive. There are some things that we require as far as setbacks and that sort of thing. Where she's talking about permanent foundations and all that, those are private deed restrictions. And what she is saying tonight, unless it's something we require, then that's just basically information for the commission as well as for the public listening in. For those to be binding, they have to be reduced to writing. They've got to be filed in the county clerk's office. They've got to specifically apply to these lots. and it has to be of record before these lots are sold. So as long as those steps are met, then yes, sir, they will be enforceable, and they will be enforceable by the developer or by any one or more of the upcoming lot owners.
Thank you. But to clarify, they're not required at this point
No,
to
sir.
follow up
For
on what's been
example,
proposed.
the permanent foundation or stick construction or anything like that, we do not have the legal authority to make such a requirement.
Understand.
So
Understand.
she is simply informing us of her plans, and she's informing you of her plans. In
Understand.
order for that to become binding, no, she's got, or whomever in her organization has to reduce that to writing, proper form, and it's got to be filed in the clerk's office, and it's got to explicitly apply to these lots. That's not.
Okay, I can speak to that, Mr. Corrigan. You know, we're a land developer. We know how these restrictions are worded and put together. We have legal counsel, and we've been working through this over the last month. If we are approved, you know, via this commission, we will be doing exactly what, I'm sorry, I can't remember the council's name, but we will be doing exactly what he said. We will be putting them onto the deed and into the record and enforceable by ourselves and the lot owners who in turn buy from us. But what he's talking about, what you're talking about, those are you know, elements that are up to us as the developer, as private owners. And, you know, we've done everything really that we've been asked to do. And we also intend to, you know, make it of record legally as well. So I don't think you need to be worried that I'm not going to do what I'm saying I'm going to do.
Yeah, I understand. But please don't take my comments as wrong. I'm simply making the point that, yeah, you are a private property owner and you have every right to utilize your property the way you see fit. Our concern, when I say our, this is a number of the neighbors on the north side, is your best intentions may not prove out all the way. And when these properties are sold, that's the end of your commitment to this area. But those of us that live here currently can be impacted either for the good, if this property is developed the way you hope, or it could be negatively impacted. I'm simply trying to get a little more reassurance than you know, a verbal acclamation at a meeting.
Well, it's going to go into the record, and it's also, you know, I'm not sure what else we can say, because we're taking the steps that you're asking us to you know, make of legal record the restrictions on the land that you have told me are important to you. We've executed those. So, I mean, they will go into the record, and we don't walk away from our developments either. The developer is in some of the restrictions, and we have an ability to overrule, you know, and enforce violations of the restrictions, et cetera. So it's not something we want to walk away from or leave anyone, you know, in a bad situation. You know, we're complying with the law and, you know, the spirit and the letter. And I hope you can believe me when I say, you know, I think it's going to be okay and you'll be happy.
I do believe you. I'm saying you're part of a large corporate group, and I'm simply making the point that, you know, that this is just conversation from the legal, as was already pointed out to us. So would you consider making a copy of these restrictions available to those of us that have already contacted you with concerns? And I do want to say publicly, you've been very good at responding. Your company has been transparent about your process. You responded quickly to our request for information, and I'm not trying to imply otherwise. I'm simply saying that, again, from a legal standpoint, this is all just verbal acclamation at this point. Would you consider making a copy available?
Yes, I will do that. Once it's finalized, I mean, it's almost done. So I will be able to give that to you in the next few days, I would say.
That'd be
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. I'll ping you again by email, and you can respond that way if you choose.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Mr.
Mr. Corrigan.
Thank you. I appreciate your cooperation. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Next,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
if I may, Mr. Corrigan, we deal with this in town all the time. To give an example, say Ball Homes that has a large development and has restrictions, and you know, they have to enforce those as they're building and after the fact, after they sell those lots and those homes to those homeowners, those restrictions are still in place. And so I think you'll find that this will be the same thing out there. You're muted, Mark.
Sorry about that. Next on the list next panel up is Kayla Dunaway, but it's not Kayla. And I'm not even sure if that gentleman had sworn in yet. So Matt, if you wouldn't unmute, or if you wouldn't mind unmuting Kayla Dunaway, and then for the record, state your name, and then Charlie's going to swear you in.
Robert Dunaway.
Robert Dunaway. Charlie, would you swear Mr. Dunaway in?
Yes, sir. Mr. Dunaway, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the statements you are about to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Floor is yours, sir.
Also a neighbor, I'm on the east side of the property. I'm also a neighbor to Tom Cheek, and a lot of the questions asked about the fence line, I was wanting to also be included when the property was sold, to be able to have a copy of the agreement of the rules that set up and everything if possible, and the fence restrictions, like on maintaining the fence and on the requirements on the subdivision if possible.
It sounds like the applicant's been very receptive to previous gentleman's, Mr. Inyart's comment. Sounds like they've been very cooperative. So I'd say definitely reach out to Miss Alicia Prokos, if I pronounce that right. And it sounds like she'll be very cooperative in getting you all that information.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I do have your address, so I can mail it out, or if you'd like to contact me at the phone number on the letter that you received, I can take your email address and we can do it that way. Anything, whatever's best for you.
And I appreciate you working with all these neighbors. It's always very nice to hear the applicant, because we get a lot, it's usually the opposite. The applicant doesn't cooperate quite well. It sounds like you've done a great job with these neighbors. So I do appreciate that as a commission.
Thank you.
If you could mail a copy, I would appreciate it. And email, I'll get in contact with you with my email and get a copy also.
Thank you both. Mr. Cheek, raise your hand again. And if you did, would you unmute Mr. Cheek?
Yeah.
Would you raise your right hand, please?
No, Mr. Cheek already swore in.
Oh, I'm losing count. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I had one final question, and this is probably for Ms. Prokos. And it concerns basically time. What is the timeline? Will there be any actual work done before the properties are in other words, will any entrances be put in prior to selling properties? What exactly is your approach to execution, and what's your timeline?
Okay, once we get approval, which this meeting is a part of that process, we will be able to start on our driveway work and our entrances. We would like to put them on the market as soon as possible, as you can imagine. But we will have an ongoing kind of construction effort on the driveways and the entrances, as they are simultaneously going on the market. We won't probably be starting that for a couple of weeks because the weather has been so cold, and when the dirt and the soil is too wet, it makes it hard to put in the bedrock for the driveways. So we're waiting until the weather is turning, but as soon as it cooperates, the weather, we're going to start. I don't anticipate that driveways or the entrances will take more than a week or two. The entrances we put in with the cooperation of the transportation cabinet, and we put in culverts that have been dictated by them, and they help us place them. But there's not a lot of infrastructure going in. We intend to leave it the piece of beautiful land that it is.
My concern primarily was that once you start putting in those entrances, that those are access points to a very large piece of property that really can't be monitored easily. And my suggestion would be to keep it fenced until you till you've sold the lots, and really, I don't even think I'd put the entrances in.
Well,
it'll be, as I said, because you're not going to be able to. I'm afraid somebody, there's a lot of hunters, a lot of it's just a big piece of property to have wide open.
Yeah, we will have gates and whatnot on the property. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying. We'll have trespassing signs. But yeah, part of what we're offering our customer is, something that they can drive up onto and look around without, having to go through a bunch of mud and weeds. So, we do plan on, constructing the entrances for them as a part of, what they're buying.
Right, I understand that, but the question would be, do you put that entrance in when they purchase the property? Because, as I said, there may be some lots that don't sell for quite some time, and they're going to end up with a they'll get a brand new entrance at some point. But my concern primarily is just in hunting season. It's just going to be inundated.
Okay, that's some good advice, and we'll work on the security as an important note. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Next, it looks like we've got a Mary Ann Jolly. Matt, will you unmute Mrs. Jolly? Miss Jolly, does she need to unmute herself, Matt?
That's correct. She should be able to unmute herself.
Oh, there you go. Mrs. Jolly.
Okay. Hi.
Charlie, would you swear Mrs. Jolly in?
If you raise your right hand, please, do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes.
Thank you.
My question was to, I think, the commission. Am I right in assuming that tracks 3, 4, and 5 will have a shared maintenance agreement noted that has to be enforced for the shared driveway?
I would let Matt answer that. Matt, you want to answer that?
Yes, they will have a shared driveway, and Ms. Prokos has stated that they will have built into the deed their maintenance agreement.
Okay. And then for Alicia, you and I talked last week about our house sits directly across from the shared driveway, and we had talked about possibly changing the angle on the outcome of the shared driveway where it meets Stone Lane to keep the headlights from shining into our house every time someone's in and out. Has there been any development on that?
No, we've been waiting, for our approval. But I have that, I have a note on that, and we'll be examining that as we get people out for construction in the coming weeks.
Okay. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Jolly. Thank you, Mrs. Prokos. Any other questions by the community? I don't see any other hands. Any other questions by the commission for the applicant? Oh, looks like, yep, Mr. Corrigan has another question.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. We've seen that what appears to be test site digging at each of the tracks. Alicia, is that correct?
Yeah, that was the Scott County or WEDCO Health Department
Yes.
doing the soil testing.
Yes. So should we assume then that each of those lots will have a required lagoon system?
Yeah, that's right. Each lot individually was tested and, given a recommended configuration of the lagoon system that they would need to maintain sanitary conditions and prevent runoff, et cetera.
Understand. Okay. So there were no lots approved for a leach system.
No.
They all will have to have lagoons, so there's no runoff at all. Is that
That's
correct?
right. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you both. Any other questions? Commission, have any questions? With no further questions, I'll ask for a motion.
Chairman, I would move that we accept FSP 2021-03 along with the 5 conditions of approval.
Actually 6. Remember, we added the one to comply with all applicable
6 conditions of approval.
cemetery, correct. So we have a motion by Ms.
second.
A second by Mrs. Mizell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, application passes. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody in the community coming out with the questions and concerns. We always appreciate that. And again, Mrs. Prokos, thank you for being very receptive to the calls and answering all their questions as they've reached out to you over this period of time. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thanks.
So what you have to do now is you'll call planning and zoning and schedule an appointment to go and sign all the proper paperwork.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like we've got one more. Actually, I think 2. So we're going to talk about the budget. PSP 2021-04 Falls Creek Phase 2. A request for preliminary subdivision plat. Approval for 23 single-family lots, 6 duplex lots, and an open space lot in Phase 2 of Falls Creek Village, located east side of Falls Creek Development. And I think, Joe, this is yours.
Yes. Okay, this is a request for preliminary subdivision plat approval for an area of Falls Creek. Just about the last area that's hasn't been reviewed, doesn't have any approvals on. You saw this amended master plan for this area in December. You reviewed it, didn't take any action, but this is the preliminary subdivision plat for that area. There's also going to be a preliminary development plan required if they want to do any townhomes more than 3 units per building. We allow building permits to be pulled on duplexes, but anything over a duplex requires preliminary development plan approval. And they have left off the area of Phase 2 that they had shown as townhomes of 3 units, 3 to 8 unit buildings. They may or may not do that in the future, but we've asked them to leave this off this plat because we can't approve the lots without first seeing the development plan. So the request tonight is just for the single family lots. They range in size from 60 to 70 foot width. And The access to this area is off Waterson Park Drive, which is a stub road off Falls Creek Drive. It splits and goes to the north and south. North of Waterson Drive essentially is single family lots with a large area of floodplain that's been incorporated into a 2.88 acre lot up in this northeast corner. And then essentially south of Waterson Park Drive are the duplex lots. And then there's also 3 single family lots being added along Falls Creek Drive, where there was a small linear park in the previous, go back a second, Matt. Here on the previously approved master plan for this area. So Falls Creek was originally approved in 99, 2000 with a concept plan overall. It was the project was amended kind of multiple times, just rearranged things a little bit. They came back for an amended master plan approval for essentially this phase 2 area in 2005. So at that time, they intended, or the plan included 52 single family lots in this phase 2, and then they added in, or they shifted over some multifamily over on the west side as part of phase 2 as well. So this phase 2 multifamily has already been approved. We've got a preliminary development plan approval on it. So that just leaves this remaining area along the creek, and then some future development area across the creek that's use of which is yet to be determined because it has access kind of restrictions to it. So they've left that for future still, and they want to do the single family lots, but then the duplex townhomes to the south. So as far as this development, it was approved as a PUD, R1C PUD, and a B4 PUD for a kind of a mixed use commercial / office area. The remainder was going to be a mix of building types from single family up to apartments. So the duplexes that they're proposing are not out of character with what was originally approved. Our main question when we first saw it was whether they would have to meet the city passed an ordinance in 2015 called a change in schema development ordinance, essentially called for a developer to lay out a scheme when it was originally approved, and then stick with that scheme. And if they want to change it, they need to come back with a public hearing and get planning commission approval. After talking to the applicant and the applicant's attorney and reading through the ordinance with Charlie, I think we've determined that this isn't a change in schema development because that ordinance laid out the scheme as the HOA covenants and restrictions. So this additional area, this new area, will be included in the HOA's covenants and restrictions that are already established for the neighborhood. So even though there's some duplex units, they all will have the same architectural standards, architectural controls, scheme of dues and requirements to maintain the open space and so forth, and use of the open space. So it's going to be added in or annexed into the HOA scheme. So we don't think it needs a vote on the change in schema development. As far as any other issues that we see with the layout, the duplex lots and the single family lots generally meet our residential standards. I want to make sure, and I added it as a condition of approval, that the single family lots be maintained at least at a minimum of 60 foot of width at the building line, and the duplex lots be 80 feet of width at the building line, which is our minimum, essentially our minimum standard for single family and duplex lots. There is some floodplain. I guess the reason that this area was never developed is there was a change in the floodplain with a new floodplain study that was done in the interim between concept plan and plating. It changed significantly the amount of floodplain along the creek and made kind of the layout that was shown on the previous concept plan unbuildable. So it really necessitated a redesign if they wanted to get any of those lots that they originally intended for this area to get anywhere near that density. It really required a new layout. So that's why they're coming back now and they're asking for the duplexes. So as far as the lot layout and the street layout, these are all going to be public streets built at the same standard as elsewhere, the other public streets in the subdivision. So as far as that goes, there are no issues. I did have some concerns about the open space, just making sure the open space was accessible and usable by all the residents of the subdivision. And I did inquire and ask and put as a condition of approval that they provide a pedestrian easement along the back of these lots, just to provide access to the creek. And we talked about this a little bit at workshop, that the developers of this area don't actually own to the creek. So Whitaker Land Company, which owns all the land kind of across the creek, owns some land on this Falls Creek side of the creek. So this property line that you're seeing on this drawing is actually the limits of the land that the Smiths own. So the Whitaker Land Company owns this area from the back of the property to the creek. And I talked to Ralph Rochelle earlier today, and they are opposed to any type of pedestrian easement adjacent or in their property. Although he did say that he is open, and he's talked to the city in the past about donating or allowing the city to build a trail back there as part of a citywide trail system. And they are interested in talking to the city about that, and not only on this property, but on other property they own, which was good to hear. And I think that's, very a positive kind of sign that we could maybe get some more trails citywide on some of the open spaces where it was previously, we had looked at designated trail corridors. So, I think that's a positive thing, and I'm okay with leaving it off the back of these lots, as long as there's access to the creek kind of in the park areas and up to the north. And maybe we can have further discussions with the Whitaker Land Company about maybe the city taking over and building some type of trail system in the future along the creek to connect that area. But it really doesn't make sense to have it on the back of the lots if you couldn't get access to the creek anyway across the Whitaker property. So I'm okay with removing one of the condition. I guess it's number 4, that a minimum pedestrian easement be placed on the back of the lots. Other than that, they're showing an access, a trail through the park area. I guess that'll be a mulch trail. And I've noted in the staff report that we'd like to see a sidewalk connection on both sides of that street, even in the park area. Typically, we get sidewalk constructed when the houses are built, but we'd like to see that sidewalk constructed on both sides of the street around the cul-de-sac, so people walking on the sidewalk, can continue that loop and connect to the trail if they want to. Otherwise, they'll have access to the whole park area. I don't believe I had any other concerns. I think the 2 issues with the schema development and the pedestrian access have been worked out. So we are recommending approval with the 10 conditions of approval, removing condition number 4 on the minimum trail pedestrian easement.
Thank you,
That's all I
Joe.
have at this point.
Any questions by the commissioners for Joe Kane?
Well, I had one question on think this one duplex lot shown down at the very end, is that going to be 80 foot wide at the building? It says what they need to be at least 80 feet wide.
I couldn't,
It
I
looks
couldn't tell if that was 80 feet based on the drawing. They can steal us a couple feet from the other lots just to bring that up to, if they can't meet it, they can bring that up tonight, but I would anticipate that they meet it by just, if it's not shown as it is meeting it, just shifting some lot lines in order to meet it. We're taking some area out of the leftover, the remnant.
It looks like it's close there, but
Yeah.
It's kind of pie shaped. It doesn't look, it only looks like it's about 30, 35 feet wide, maybe at the front end. Back end, of course, has a lot of space, but the front end definitely is not 80 foot wide. Any hold that question, Steve. We'll have the applicant answer that, and I'm sure have a presentation for us as well. Any other questions by the commission for Joe Kane at this point? And then again, we'll hear from the applicant. Any questions? If not, we'll open it up to the applicant. I know I've seen Brent Combs on here, the engineer. And if I'm not mistaken, Attorney Billings is on here as well. Let's speak first. The floor is yours. And then, of course, Mr. Perkins will swear you in.
I'm on here, but my video's not on yet.
Okay.
1 second.
While we're waiting on your video, while you're talking, raise your right hand and Mr. Perkins will swear you in. Charlie? You want to swear Mr. Billings in?
Yes, I was on mute. Good place for me.
Yeah.
Mr. Billings, you raise your right hand, please. You swear affirm the statement you're about to give to be the truth to the best of your information and belief.
You hear me okay?
Yes, you were just administered the oath. Did you say I do?
I just want to make sure you could hear me. That's right. All right, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Was there an I do in there?
I did say I do, yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I'm sorry. I do. I'll say it again. I do. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the commission and staff. My name is Nathan Billings with Billings Law Firm, and it's my pleasure this evening to represent the applicant Oxford Place with respect to this application for PSP 2021-4. I don't know if Brent Combs, I think he's in the audience, he may have a question, and I do have a presentation if Mr. Summers could let me share my PowerPoint. I'm also here tonight with Joey and Doug Smith here in my office. They're sort of socially distanced on the other side of our conference room here. To the extent they need to speak, we'll make sure I swing the camera around so that Mr. Perkins can administer the oath to them and they can be sworn in as well.
Thank you, Mr. Billings.
Now, if I can see if I can do this correctly. There we go.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. Okay. So the first part of my presentation, it concerns the common scheme of development, Mr. Chair, and we did have a meeting with, pursuant to the TRC or the work session on Monday. I had a conversation with Mr. Perkins and Mr. Kane yesterday on the common scheme of development. And in anticipation that we might need to address that tonight, I've got some slides on that. It appears to me that based on Mr. Kane's comments, I can skip ahead from those, but I don't want to assume that incorrectly. If the commission would like me to address it, I'm certainly happy to. We're all in agreement, I think, that no common scheme of development change is occurring because this property is going to be submitted into the HOA. Therefore, I don't think we need to address that, but I don't want to miss that opportunity if you want me to address it.
I will leave that open to the commission. Commission, would you want him to address that or do you want him to skip ahead? Commissioners?
I would
Joey,
say skip it at this time. And
all right. Anybody else?
I would ask Joe, are you all right with leaving it alone at this point?
Yeah, I am.
You are, okay.
You can ask Char. I think, I don't want to speak for Charlie, but I think after our discussion, I think we're pretty comfortable.
Charlie, do you feel comfortable?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Mr. Chairman, we talked about this back in December. I didn't really think it applied. So, no, sir, very comfortable with this.
Thank you all then. I would say then, Mr. Billings, go ahead and skip ahead.
That saves you all a lot of time this evening and me. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Ms. Smith, thank you as well. So pursuant to our meeting with Mr. Kane and Mr. Perkins yesterday, I've gone ahead and prepared a draft declaration of submission. I've sent it over to staff as well. A draft of that is up on your screen. We can't record this until the final plat actually goes to record, but just to show the commission in good faith, what's already been prepared, that document to submit this section of phase 2 is already prepared, so that once that plat goes to record, we can complete the blanks for the plat cabinet, slide number, and put it to record that this is part of the HOA. Makes it very simple. All right, so from where we were in December, which was a discussion of a master plan, I believe that the content and the plan that's being submitted to the commission tonight is a much simpler, much cleaner, and much easier plan to review and to consider. And I think Mr. Kane's comments and the staff report reflect that. Specifically, there are 23 single-family detached lots proposed. There are 12 single-family attached lots proposed, along with the open space, green space, and trails. Notably, the discussion that consumed a significant amount of time at the December master plan discussion is not being proposed at this time. Staff has opined, I think correctly, that requires a preliminary development plan. Therefore, on the plan you have in front of you, you have a large white area. We have said we intend to have townhouses there, but for tonight, I don't think it bears any other discussion other than to say we don't have townhouses in the area and it doesn't need to be discussed at all. I'm sure if we come back in the future, it will have a lengthy discourse about it, but I think it makes your jobs easier and shorter tonight. If you have the staff recommendation in front of you, we largely agree with almost everything staff has said, with except for 2 things, which I'll talk about here in a few minutes. Just for context, here's the original 2004 zone change map. You'll note this area is reflected to be single family with certain lot sizes, specifically 55 or 60-foot lots by 120. My understanding in prior applications before this commission is that typically is taken to be the average of the lot widths, because there may be variances based upon cul-de-sac widths, et cetera. But it's not every single lot has to meet that, but the average of those has to be. Different areas had different size lots, and the lots we're proposing are in conformity with that. This was the master plan submitted at the same time, sort of outlined there again with the 55 or 60-foot average single family lots. 2005 master plan that Mr. Kane showed you, it was there. It had a outline and it says single family lots as well. This is an inarticulate drawing that I used in the PowerPoint to just show the baseline of where we're proposing the single family lots to be today. Again, this sort of a close end of that 2005 master plan. The 2020 amended master plan that we submitted to you all, again, it didn't need a vote. This comes back to you. We have removed the townhouse area, but otherwise, this is fairly consistent with our submitted master plan. Again, it's not binding, it wasn't voted upon, but it shows the consistency in what we're doing, except we're now removing the townhouses from the project. So we basically have 4 areas now. We have single family lots. We have the 2-unit townhome, or what are more appropriately called single family attached lots, and the green space trail. And there's a future, not to be discussed, future multiple townhouse, multiple unit or townhouse lots that will be in a separate application, most likely. I'm going to run through the single family locations. There's 3 along the main drive. There is 1 here along Watterson Park Place. There's a number of lots along the north of the road yet to be named. Stub down to a cul-de-sac. Come back through. Skip. There's the ones that will be to the north, lots 1 to 13. I do want to point out that because we have a cul-de-sac here, you'll see that these lot widths along the road, and actually while there's a building line here, some of these are less than 50 feet. And I've asked Mr. Combs to make sure he's calculated these, and he can give you all the evidence in a minute that the average of these meet or exceed what staff is recommending. We just want to make sure that it reads as the average and not that each one has to comply with that boundary being the R1C PUD. Here's the three again along Falls Creek Drive. There are the lots 19 to 23 that will be on the east side of the new road. It would back up to the creek. And then you'll see lots 24 to 29, which will be the proposed single family attached, often called duplexes. We potentially don't like the term duplex because it gives a misnomer to what we think these look like, but it's not an incorrect, it's probably technical term to call them that. Again, these duplex lots, the single family attached lots line up with the back of the creek. Again, where there was proposed townhouse before, this is not for discussion tonight. It's for a future area, for a future application. One of the things that we didn't talk about before that I do want to point out to you is there is a very, very complex series of easements that run across this property. The sanitary sewer has been installed under the proposed streets already, which means the telemetry of the street and the lot alignments largely can have a very limited layout because of the infrastructure already put in place. What that means is the developers already spent a bunch of money on infrastructure, and to move the road location or move lot locations is going to be a challenge. And so that's why this plan, the roadway literally lines up with what was done before. And it's not a redesign of the site because it just wouldn't be economical or efficient with respect to the infrastructure already in the ground. Staff has recommended 11 conditions, one of which the staff we also talked to Whitaker Land, and I appreciate Mr. Kane being willing to follow up with Mr. Rochelle from Whitaker Land and talk through that. Just to go through staff conditions, number one, all previous application conditions for the zone change, we agree. That's been on every prior plan in the development. That's consistent, that we agree. Number two, we think that the single family lots, or staff recommended the single family lots to be built north and northwest of Watterson Park and should be single family detached, which are single family standalone, and that only on the south of Watterson, where we have the proposed single family attached or the duplex lots, shall be permitted south of Watterson. We agree. We just don't want that to be misconstrued to apply to what could be the townhouse area yet. It's really only what's on this plan. Otherwise, we agree with staff's comment. Three, single family lots shall be single family detached lots shall be 60-foot minimum width at the building line. Again, that 55 or 60-foot width was proposed all the way back at the master plan. Because of the variances in some of the lot sizes, we do want to make sure that reads that is an average of those lots, which again, Mr. Combs can tell you in a second, is satisfied. Mainly it's because there's some cul-de-sac lots that make that a little bit more challenging to meet, but we've increased the width of other lots to do that. So we're in agreement as long as it's that average. Number four has been resolved by Mr. Kane's comments. Thank you for doing that. Five, the open spaces shall be owned and maintained by the HOA. That's been a condition all the way going back to the original zone change by staff. It's been consistent throughout all the applications. Staff has always recommended that. The applicant has always agreed to that. We continue to agree that these open space, green spaces would be deeded eventually and would be owned and maintained by the HOA. Also, the previous architectural standards for Fall Creek shall apply. There's a lot of architectural standards set forth in the deed of restrictions. If you all want, I can pull it up and show it to you. Because this property is going to be submitted into that we agree with that. It will happen just by operation of the submission. Seven, this is really the only one that I give pushback on behalf of the applicant tonight, and I'll explain why. Number seven, staff has asked that the maximum number of dwelling units in the remaining area of phase two, and I think they mean coupled with what's being proposed here, which is 36 units, to not exceed the 52 units previously approved in the 2005 master plan. What we would suggest is this application has less than the number of units, which is 36, and that the Planning Commission would be inappropriate to take evidence on or make a decision on density of an area that has not been submitted to you all for a preliminary subdivision plan or for a preliminary development plan at this time. In other words, this application complies with the density requirements from before. It doesn't vary for those. And for the Planning Commission to look at another piece of property that's not in this application and try to put a density cap on that would be inappropriate. But again, I think that's going to be a discussion potentially if we actually submit a plan for the townhouse area, but we don't think it's appropriate for tonight. Conditions 8, 9, 10, and 11 are typical staff sign-offs. We agree with all of those. There's nothing unusual or untoward about those. So we agree with those. So that the dwelling units density is really the only thing that we would ask the commission to not address or to not put in place, because that would be overreaching and deal with a property that's not subject to, or a portion of property that's not subject to this application tonight. I think before the meeting began, I believe it was Mr. Mifflin may have asked a question about whether the applicant had met with the homeowners, and the answer is yes. Staff relayed that. On Tuesday, January 26th, we had a virtual meeting with them. We sent out notice in early January or so to all of the properties out there and all of the residents. We have followed up with Mr. Bruwicki several times by email to see if they want to have any additional discussions, and haven't heard anything. I think he maybe has had, this Smith relayed that he lost his dog, and I'm certainly sorry for that. So I certainly wasn't trying to harass him if I was sending him emails. I just wanted to follow up, see if there's other comments. But I think that the owner comments were largely reflective of what you all heard in December. The comments of the meeting that night were similar, and I expect that the comments you may hear tonight are also similar, and they sort of break into a couple of categories. The first is property values, that they are concerned that the townhouses would decrease property values, or that duplexes would decrease property values. And we would submit to you all, one, because there's no townhouses here, that evidence is irrelevant tonight. And I would ask you all not even to hear anything about that, because it's just not to be considered. Second is, as the commission knows, and I think Mr. Summers, you recently indicated this, the property value concern by owners, one, I'll tell you, was not supported by evidence that I've done for 15 years of land use work. But number two, it's not even a standard under the subdivision regulations that the Planning Commission can hear when determining whether the proposal meets the master plan as approved at the zone change stage, which we believe this does. They also made some comments about concerns about increase in crime. Those are also related to tenants and concerns about tenants or rental properties that related to townhouses. So we don't think those concerns need to be addressed tonight, or should be addressed. And then finally, probably the biggest 800-pound gorilla is concerns about certain types of the lots being a handful of the single-family detached properties and the 12 single-family attached, or the duplex lots, do have floodplains in the backyard, and those owners expressed concerns for that. And I would tell them, I thank them for their concern for somebody else's property and property rights in the future, of which they don't own. But I will tell you all, from the same thing we relayed in December, the same thing we relayed to them in January, there are multiple protections under the law that the applicant or a builder, if it sells a lot to a builder, has to comply with respect to the floodplain. The first one is the FEMA. FEMA sets the 100-year floodplain, not us, not the city, not the county. And as you all know, that floodplain changed significantly from the original plan in 2004. It actually goes back to 1997, I think, was the floodplain at that time. It's been changed at least twice. That floodplain is set, which has caused development issues for the applicant. Second, you can't build in the floodplain. The land behind this is a conservation easement, so you can't put anything in there anyway. But you can't build in the floodplain under federal law, state ordinance, local ordinance. And in fact, your building guidelines require that there is a finished floor elevation, often called the FFE, that the finished floor elevation, which is the poured concrete floor slab, has to be at least 24 inches above the floodplain. And that is intended to make sure that the property owners' improvements, personal property, furniture is so far outside of that 100-year floodplain that by the time you go another 24 inches up, it gives that owner protection. Now, my understanding is that state law doesn't actually have a 24-inch FFE requirement. State law actually allows you to put the structure at the level of the 100-year floodplain, but counties like Scott County and City of Georgetown are allowed to increase that. They just can't decrease it. And you all have elected to increase it, which is an additional owner protection. They've also asked a question about the 500-year floodplain. I went back and researched this, and there's basically no regulations regarding the 500-year floodplain because what that is there's a 1% chance in a 500-year period that area would flood. And the federal government doesn't have any guidelines or requirements for that, nor does the state, nor does the city of Georgetown. And so while I respect their comments about the 500-year floodplain, I just don't think it's relevant. The final question they had was, well, how will homeowners know it's in a floodplain and what do they have to do if their property has floodplain? And the answer is very simple. If a person purchases a property, their mortgage company, if it is a federally backed mortgage company, will require them to have a flood insurance policy. And depending on the value of the improvements and how much of the property is in the floodplain depends on the insurance premium. And it can vary from a couple $100s to a couple $1,000s, depending on that. Most homes that we expect to be out here will be somewhere between the high hundreds to $1,200 or $1,500 per year as for flood insurance, depending upon the current flood rates. But there are multiple precautions that are in place that protect or prevent the construction of improvements in the floodplain, number one, or two, at the floodplain level, that even if it were to come up an inch more, in other words, if this is a floodplain that would come up an inch more, that's our 24-inch elevation for protection. So I think we've understood the owner's comments. I didn't mention this in my bullet point here, but one of the things was they wanted to make sure these properties were in the HOA and subject to the HOA architectural restrictions. Staff has the same recommendation. I've already shown you all the declaration of submission. We've agreed to the staff recommendation with respect to that. That was probably the only other owner comment not in there. That doesn't mean they won't have others tonight, but I tried to, in advance, be wary of those, think through those issues, just think, all right, are these things we need to resolve? How can we resolve them and be prepared to discuss them? So with that, ladies and gentlemen of the commission, I've tried to be brief, although Mr. Perkins would say you're never brief, Mr. Billings, by skipping ahead on the common scheme of development and trying to be quick through some of the stuff that staff already presented. So I appreciate your time tonight. We respectfully request approval with the conditions as modified by our presentation. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Attorney Billings. Well, does the commission have any questions for Attorney Billings or Brent Combs? Brent's on there as well as the engineer. I do have more of a comment or question. I think it'll be for Joe and of course for our legal counsel. Joe, are you comfortable striking number 7, which is the maximum number of dwelling units in the remaining area of phase 2 shall not exceed the number of units previously approved in the 2005 master plan? That plan approved 52 single family dwelling units. To Attorney Billings' point, that's off the table right now. So how can we try to maximize the number of units on there when we're not discussing that property at this time and point in time? Joe, are you okay with striking that 7?
Yeah, I'm okay. I agree.
And Charlie, we can do that. I mean, that I would agree with that. Correct, Charlie?
Yes, sir. I'd agree. That's fine.
Okay. All right. So we'd strike number 7 along with number 4 we've already stricken, which would then narrow it down to 9 conditions at this point. And then, of course, open for more comment and discussion by the commissioners. And then also if Brent Combs wants to speak as the engineer, and then we'll open it up to public comment or questions. Commissioners, any other questions, comments? If none, Brent Combs, do you have anything to say?
Well, I will follow up on what Nathan said about the average lot width. And I think we're in good shape anyway, because the way Joe phrased it, it's at the building line.
Excuse me, needs to be sworn
I've
in.
drawn-
Oh, yes, thank you, Mr. Mifflin. Brent Combs, we're going to swear you in here. Charlie Perkins.
Yes, sir. Brent, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm what you're about to say to be the truth, to the best of your information and belief?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Mr. Combs. Sorry about that.
So anyway, what I'm saying was I've already drawn the building lines in there, and at the location of the building lines, all the lots are at least 60 feet wide. So I think we're in good shape there.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Combs, I know there was a question from, I believe it was Mr. Smith, about the last single family attached lot at the very end on the southern cul-de-sac. The width there is not the 80 feet. Can you describe how the averaging would work if that were to come into play? Yeah, that's the right one. Thank you.
Well, if you use average, then you take the entire length along the street frontage for multiple lots and then divide it by the number of lots, and then that would give you an average. And so the average on this layout for the single family is probably closer to 65 to 67 feet. But that one lot that he was asking about was originally part of the multi-family area, but because there was only 2 units there, I went ahead and included it on this application.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Combs, is lot 18, I mean, that looked like an anomaly to me. Is that why it was left so wide so that you could achieve this average width?
No, the client just wanted that lot to go all the way over to the open space area. The buildable area on that lot is as you look at the screen, is on the left-hand side. So
right.
That was the reason for that. We get the average without using that lot width on that one.
That's correct. That's what I was going to point out as well, Mr. Mifflin, is that we meet the averages even without that lot being included.
Thank you.
But that's a good question. That's a good observation.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Billings or Mr. Combs? Otherwise, there's several people in attendance. If you want to speak, please, at the very bottom of your screen, there's a raise hand. You'd click on that and raise your hand if you'd like to speak either in favor, against. There you go. There's the directions of how to do it. Like I said, I see quite a few people in here. Looks like Kathleen Zazicki, if I pronounced that right.
You did perfect on that. My mother couldn't do it for 10 years.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I just have a couple of things.
Before we get going, we'll swear you in. I'm
okay.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
Mr. Perkins, would you swear her in, please?
Yes, if you could raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief?
I do.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. With all due respect, Mr. Billings, I just want to reiterate what Mr. Bruwitzki said to you, I believe at our January meeting, that he was not our representative for the homeowners. He's been kind enough to help us and speak for us on our behalf, but he is not a representative for the homeowners in Falls Creek. So I just wanted to make that clear that, Brew yes, he has been emailing and contacting and been very, very helpful, but I just don't want to put all the onus on Brew with what's going to happen with Falls Creek. Second, what I'd like to say is, I believe the floodplain is, you're correct with, the 100-year and the 500-year. And I think that with the Dodd-Frank Act back in, I think it was the late 90s, that banks do require, they went back and pulled all commercial and residential mortgages and made sure that the property was not in a floodplain. So I just wanted to let everyone know that when someone does buy a piece of property, that the bank is going to require, flood insurance if in fact they are in a floodplain, the 100-year. And, you know, a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 is probably per month and not annually. Just, you know, that was just a side note, just to let you know, and to make the, I'm sure Mr. Billings knows that, and I'm sure Joey and Doug also know that, you know, with the Dodd-Frank Act, things have changed a lot with banking and mortgages. All right, my main concern, or my main thing I'd like to discuss tonight is I contacted the Scott County DOT regarding a traffic count for the villages of Falls Creek. And then they gave me to the state highway garage and said, okay, a traffic count. They do have it on the KYTC traffic count website that we could get the most recent for US 25 and 32 for Champion Way to see the number of cars. And that said, I think we as homeowners here in the villages of Falls Creek, because there's one entrance in and an exit out, and one entrance in and the exit out on the north, south, east, west. Forget it, I navigation doesn't do it for me. But anyway, the traffic conditions, I mean, at 6 o'clock in the morning when the buses and the school, you know, the school traffic and Toyota going in and out is, you can see just red lights going back and forth. And we're very concerned regarding the number of cars that are going to be increased on a one in and one out street. I mean, at the villages of Falls Creek, I mean, you come in Champion Way and go out 25, or you come in 25 and go out Champion Way. You know, parking on one side of the street is only supposed to be, and that's what it says in our HOA. However, if you come in Falls Creek from 25 to go to Champion's Way, down where the duplexes and the quads are, there's parking on both sides of the street. That said, you know, snow plows, emergency vehicles, the garbage trucks, you know, and 3 schools across the street with traffic cutting through from Champion Way to 25 is, you know, morning, lunchtime, and then between 3 and 5 o'clock is, you know, is busy. You know, even the mailman, you know, with the new housing, which is wonderful, but with all of the traffic and all of the construction and all of the stuff going on, our mail doesn't get delivered for a day or two if there are, you know, and that's a given when you're building in a new community. I understand that. But my more concern is, you know, the emergency vehicles. I mean, I've already had to call the fire department on my house and had 2 hook and ladders and a fire truck and an emergency ambulance, the police department, and an SUV outside my house. And it clogged the street for 35 minutes. So the concern is how much traffic is going to be added with the new 35 units, whether they're, you know, townhomes or attached homes, as you refer to them as Mr. Billings, or single family. And what is the plan as far as traffic flow that is now going to come in Falls Creek down a small side street, and then all of those new homes there? And when you're coming in from 25 on Falls Creek Drive, both sides of the street every evening, it's pickup trucks and SUVs and cars. And God forbid we have a snowstorm and need to have, you know, the snowplow come in, well, like this morning with, you know, with the ice. And if the garbage truck is coming through and the ice truck is coming through, and, you know, if an emergency vehicle is coming through, they're not going to make it. So my concern is, and with the new 75 northbound, southbound exit to Champion Way for Toyota, which is wonderful. But, you know, it's just more traffic that is coming through. And in the period of time that I've lived here, I mean, there are days where traffic is heavy and there's other days where it's not so much. But so I want to know, what is the plan for the additional homes that are going to be built? And you have one street that comes into this development where the new properties are proposed.
Mr. Billings, do you want to answer?
I can provide a couple of things, Mr. Chairman. The first one is I believe that the local regulations provide that through a single street, you can have up to 100 units accessible through that street. But you can get a waiver from that. I think maybe Ball Homes has an apartment complex like that. So in this case, the additional units off of Watterson Park don't exceed the regulation with respect to those units. Number two, there's actually 3 entrances and exits out of this development. This development is is complex in that it has single family residential, multifamily residential, commercial, and it was approved in 2004 with 3 entrances and exits based upon a density of 336 or maybe it's 338 total units with the commercial space. And today we don't even come close to that density cap. And so respectfully, we're not going to do anything else with new roads because it's not required. And there's no traffic study that's required with respect to the additional units we're putting in. There were traffic studies done previously. With respect to some of the traffic congestion things that she has raised with like.
You're on mute.
Lost you.
Nope, we lost you, Mr. Billings.
Did you hear any of that?
No.
Just the last 10 seconds we missed.
Oh, so with respect, I don't know how I got muted. With respect to the emergency vehicles, snowplows, one of the things that was done originally in this development that has not been talked about tonight and really not back in December is that this was a traditional neighborhood development. It was designed a certain way with certain interior road layouts, type of spacing, and this was not intended to be a place where you develop a raceway that cars and vehicles were supposed to be a maximum capacity thoroughfare. It was supposed to be a traditional neighborhood development, which means there's parking on the street. There's traffic calming devices along the way. It doesn't mean that traffic is stopped altogether, because even in Ms. Zicky's case, where she had emergency vehicles that did necessitate the blocking of the street in front of her house for a bit, there were 2 other entrances and exits that people could leave or enter the subdivision and get to their houses. So that, except for the people who might have been literally right across the street from her, people may have been inconvenienced for a few minutes, but they weren't precluded from getting home or going to work or doing other things they needed to do. And the unfortunate thing, and it may sound coarse and I don't want it to be, is anytime you add a house, you're going to add an additional trip. You're going to add additional trips for that household. But just because you add an additional trip for that household or for 36 household doesn't mean that that is an unreasonable increase or that it's not permitted by the existing development. Because if that were the case, what we would have is everyone would live on 5-acre lots along Cincinnati Pike or along ancillary roads because we wouldn't have dense developments. This was approved 16 years ago, almost 17 years ago now. And the design of the roads were readily apparent when she bought her house. So I sympathize with her, but I also don't want to ignore a lot of these other factors that were present before.
Okay, and my response to you is, this is a Village of Falls Creek meeting with a Village of Falls Creek expansion of homes. Is that correct?
Mr. Billings, I think, are you looking for a comment from Mr. Billings?
Yes.
This is a preliminary subdivision plat for a portion of phase 2, which has already been approved to build upon. That is correct.
Okay, so again, my question is this meeting the Villages of Falls Creek expansion for phase 2?
The term expansion is not technical. I guess from a vernacular standpoint, you could say it's an expansion in that you are adding houses by this, but it has been approved with this density and this general layout since 2004.
Okay, so that said, you indicated that there are 3 entrances to the Villages of Falls Creek when in fact there's not, because the Villages of Falls Creek is in a certain area where you are expanding homes and the other areas are not part of Villages of Falls Creek. So that said, my concern with Champion Way and 25 and the addition to homes and the parking with, snow plows and safety vehicles and garbage trucks and parking on both sides of the street. There's a lot of elderly families that live up at the top near Champion Way. We have 3 schools across the street. We have Toyota traffic. We have the new exit 75 northbound and southbound, which increases the traffic for the villages of Falls Creek. So again, your plan for the additional traffic flow, street, with cars on both sides, when the HOA says you can park on one side and not both, well, that's ignored most of the time. So I would like to hear a plan for what would be done.
Mr. Summers, can you share the screen again with me for just a second? I don't know if that's possible. Thank you. Let me see here. We'll do this. All right. First of all, I think Ms. Zicki is asking a question that is, while I understand her concern, is not an appropriate one of the regulations. The regulations don't have a check mark for how do you plan to propose for traffic. That is handled at the zone change with the master plan. And what I'm showing you today is, I'm not showing you Google Maps, I'm showing you the PVA's aerial view because the PVA actually has a more updated map than Google does. But the Falls Creek development, which is everything from on the western side of Cincinnati Pike, all along the north of Champion Way. It actually extends past the creek, back down, comes past the creek, although the PVA map has an error in it, and circles back around to Cincinnati Pike. There are clearly 3 means of ingress and egress from the development. The development is not just Falls Creek HOA. The development is multi-component, including commercial areas, multifamily areas, the single family areas. And so I don't think I'm going to give her a satisfactory answer about how we're going to address traffic, other than the traffic was addressed at the zone change. The road layout was created and approved, and there was a traffic study done at that time. And the regulations don't require anything else at this point. There are times when the regulations could provide for an updated traffic study for a preliminary subdivision plat or preliminary development plan, but the size of this does not trigger that.
Okay. And I'll end with this. The homeowners are requesting a postponement for approval for this additional homes to be put until we can get a petition to see the number of cars, the safety issue, and what can or cannot be done to ensure our safety with the number of homes that are going to be here, the number of cars that are going to be here. And, there's a new school apparently that is also going to be built off of 25 near the corner of 25 and Champion Way, and 25 or 32. And I guess that's the cross where the Domino's and the BP station is. So that said, we have 3 schools already. We're going to get another school. We're going to get a 400 home addition, a home plat on the other side of 25. And given that scenario, we are just going to request that we do have a postponement so we can get additional information on the number of cars that probably will be increased due to the number of cars coming in here, and proposed plots, 400, I believe, for the new subdivision going in across 25, and then the 25 and the what was it? Lost my note on that one. So anyway, that is the request of the homeowners. And as I said, Bru's been wonderful, and he's been, a champion for the homeowners, but he did say at his last meeting, he is not the representative for our homeowners, and that we as homeowners, and I've spoken to several, and we are going to ask for a postponement until we can understand the additional traffic flow. At 3:30 in the afternoon, try to get out of the subdivision to go on to Champion Way. It's 17 minutes to get through the red light. I timed it the other day. So thank you for your time. And again, that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Zicki. We also have, it looks like one more hand raised, Leslie and Peggy Kane. So Matt, if you would not mind unmuting them. And, Charlie Perkins, would you swear, I'm assuming this is one or two people, I'm not sure. If you want to actually state your name before Mr. Perkins swears you in, that'd be great.
This is Leslie.
Very good. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give are the truth to the best of your information and belief?
I do.
Thank you.
The floor is yours, Mrs. Kane.
My biggest concern is more multi-family units going in, and I know that he doesn't want to talk about the townhomes, but duplexes are multifamily. They are purchased, likely to be purchased and rented. My time here in the neighborhood has started as a renter. I am now an owner. And from my time in the neighborhood, there are safety and crime issues, and they come from the renters in the neighborhood. And the reason there is issues is because when the landlords that own these rental properties these matters are brought to their attention, they don't want to address them. They tell us to deal with them ourselves. They ask us to approach these people who are doing said breaking the law, and then which then puts us, if we choose to do so, in danger, confronting someone who's breaking the law. It's been brought to their attention multiple times. The cops have been called. The cops have came here. The tenants who are breaking the laws, and I might add that the things that they're doing in this neighborhood put our homeowners, our children at risk. It is a clear breaking of the law. Police come and they have told the police to their face, catch me if you can. And they're brazen about it, and they continue to do it because the landlord won't deal with the issue. People like that should be evicted. And that's my concern about having more landlords or properties that can be owned by landlords and rented out, because they don't live here. So they don't care about us who do and our children and enforcing the law to their tenants. And it was originally made to be a neighborhood with single family homes. And I know there's some that's already built. We can't do anything about that, but I want to prevent future rentable properties.
Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate your comments. I don't know how anybody can answer that, because I think you started out by saying you were a renter, now homeowner, so congratulations. But then
Thank you.
You can't stereotype every renter as a criminal, and I would definitely never recommend taking the law into your own hands, because I mean that's a recipe for disaster. And I don't know if
I'm not saying
Attorney Billings wants to answer that. I mean, I know we hear that. Yeah, I think it's more of a comment. Would you not say? I don't know if you're looking for an answer.
Well, I'm not saying that all renters are bad. For the most part, there haven't been issues from everybody here renting, but the issues that we have had in the neighborhood with domestic violence, people riding four-wheelers in the neighborhood around our houses, which this is zone city, so that's illegal. Driving on other people's property. Those issues have been from tenants that are renting in the multi-unit housing.
I mean, I think the answer to that would be just keep calling the police, and unfortunately should get some resolution by that. I don't know, as far as the chair of the commission answer anything else. I don't know if Mr. Billings or anybody wants to answer that question. I think the right answer is to keep calling the police and don't take matters into your own hands. And because that's what we have laws for, is to prevent people from doing things that they shouldn't, riding four-wheelers. There's ordinances against that. So if you keep calling police and they keep coming out, eventually, hopefully it would stop.
Yeah, the police just don't have time to come out here every time.
Right.
And when the guy's like, well, catch me if you can, and you call the police, they might ride for 10 minutes. The police are not likely going to get here in that next 10 minutes. So it continues to happen. And what I'm saying is, when it's a landlord-owned property, they don't care. It's really the landlord's responsibility to evict his tenants who are breaking the law, and they don't want to deal with it because they don't care, because they're still getting rent money in their pocket. That's all they care about.
I think Mr. Billings wants to touch, it looks like he's ready to say something. Go ahead, Mr. Billings.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is one of those topics that comes up not infrequently in my land use cases, either when I represent the homeowners or I represent a developer. And clearly things like crime are very important to people. And there's no good way to deal with this in a hearing that doesn't make me probably seem insensitive, which I don't want to seem. Ms. Kane is clearly impacted by this in some way. It's clearly important to her, and I recognize that it is important and potentially even more than that, that she's been impacted. Respectfully, if people are breaking the law, that is not a landlord's responsibility, and it is not a developer's responsibility, and is not the Planning Commission's responsibility. Whether you approve this or not, people are still going to break the law. That's the police's job. That's the sheriff's job. That's the KSP's job. Second, people don't realize this, but a landlord can't evict a tenant for breaking the law. A landlord gets to evict a tenant for not paying the rent. So it may not be fair. It may seem insensitive, but a landlord can't go evict a tenant because they go do something that somebody else thinks is illegal. And I hear this all the time from clients who call me, or potential clients, like, I want to evict somebody. Like, what did they do? Well, they did X. Okay, well, why do you think you get to evict them? Because it's wrong. It's illegal. Okay. Did they pay the rent? Yes. Did they breach the lease? Well, I don't know. Well, if they've not, first of all, not paid the rent, that's about the only way you get to evict them. And if you all have ever been through an eviction process, district courts are very deferential to tenants in Kentucky. Again, respectfully, while I completely understand her concern, it is, in my opinion, one of these things that people say, I don't want renters in my backyard. And that is unfortunate, because somebody has to rent, as Ms. Kane has herself established. I rented for a while. I rented for a long time and before I ever bought my house. My guess is most people here were renters. The issue is not tenants. I think the issue is people in life are growing less and less responsible across our spectrum of society. And whether you approve or not approve this plan tonight, they're going to continue doing that regardless, because that's how we're getting to a more lawless society. The police need to be called. The sheriffs need to be called. It's not about whether you approve this plan or not.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. I think we do have a couple more questions. Mr. Tommy Sagaser, if I pronounce that right, Sagaser. How do you pronounce that last name, sir, if you don't mind me asking? Matt, please, Tommy. We still can't hear you, Mr. Sagaser. I think you may have to
unmute himself. Yeah.
You need to unmute yourself, sir.
Oh,
Tommy?
can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. There you go.
Oh, okay, I had you on mute. Okay.
Charlie's going to swear you in here.
Yeah, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give is the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes.
Thank you.
The floor is yours, sir.
All right. This part of this is we're trying to get this subdivision completed, and zoning board's got to approve it, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So, and the planning, whatever it is. Anyway, my question is on the flooding part. And I put on Facebook and I told them the last meeting that if they want to see some flood pictures from that area, all they had to do is click it on. I had some pictures and videos of the flood, which is, if you look at it, it's greater than what it shows here on the map. And also I sent those same pictures to the planning commission, but I used a telephone number on the sign that you had in the subdivision and attached those pictures to that for them to look at. I don't know whether anyone looked at it or not. I'm sure the Smiths looked at it and their attorney. Anyway, if you look at the video and you look at the pictures, you can tell from where I was standing at lot 1 and lot 2, and I'm looking down toward the creek. There's a fence that runs down through there, and that fence is a regular farm fence. So you have to assume from that the posts are 5 feet tall. Pretty logical, right? Anyway, so if that's at 811 and 812 where the fence is, and the fence post is 5 feet tall, that runs you up to 816 and 817. It's your numbers. And if you use those numbers in that video, every house down through there, 18, all the way 15, 16, and 17, and all 18, 19, 20, everything below that street would be completely surrounded by water. Now, the zoning board should take that under consideration. I mean, I don't think I'd want to sell someone a house in that condition. Any comments from your attorney?
I went on your Facebook page and didn't see any videos or photographs that corroborated what you said. Do you have any of that evidence to introduce tonight in the record?
Well, I had people in the subdivision said they looked at them, they were on there. Tommy Sagasser Facebook page.
Yeah,
and also, excuse me?
I tried also, this is Brent, I tried also and couldn't find any on Facebook page.
Okay, could you?
I don't know that I don't know whether your Facebook page has them or not is relevant to the thing is I would just suggest the hearing, there's an obligation to show evidence that the floodplain map would not be accurate, that might impact something. The FEMA floodplain map is set by engineers who are
well, the pictures and videos I have are pretty plain. That I'm standing on lot 2, and it would definitely be up on the circle on the street, or cul-de-sac, where you want to call it. And that's at 816 elevation. And you look at the other one down on the other end, it's at 817. I'm sure I got time to bring the pictures to you if you want to see them to the zoning board.
You have them right now?
Well, well, it'd be kind of rough tonight. But you're not going to, are you planning on approving tonight?
That's usually the intention of an application at Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Yes, sir.
I don't know why you didn't. Do you have your cell phone with you? Why don't you type on Tommy Sagasser and look at the videos on it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we can do that. I mean, you know,
the big problems we would have to take this up with FEMA or with.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
Yeah, we're Mr. Chairman, we're quite bound by what the regulations and standards that are handed down to us, and the FEMA regulations are. We really don't have any authority to exceed that.
Right.
I've looked on the website. I don't see the videos either. But that's really beyond our purview. And when they build, they're going to have to take measurements. They're going to have to take accurate elevations because they can't build unless they establish that minimum floor level. So all of this will either take care of itself or nothing will be built. But
and to Mr. Billings' point earlier, if you're in a flood zone, usually, and I'm a banker, I work at a bank, if a building is in a flood zone, meaning across the line, then your flood insurance can be quite pricey. If you stay out of the flood zone, and if you look at the map, clearly the line's almost right through the middle of the southern lots, directly from east to west, right through the middle. So as long as the buildings stay north of the flood lines or the floodplain, if you want to refer to it, that will keep the flood insurance either non-existent, because again, if there's no structure in the flood zone,
That's the 816 elevation line.
right? But the I mean, again, I'm not the flood expert. I'm a banker, and we have to follow the FEMA rules and laws, and those are in place. I don't have any choice as a banker. You know, if somebody builds in the flood zone, they're going to pay pretty hefty insurance premiums. If they stay out of the floodplain, you know, that of course voids that insurance, or pretty, you know, expensive insurance, you know, and it can be several $1,000s a year. So, you know, I think we're all unfortunately at the mercy of the FEMA maps. We don't really, and as a city, as a county, we don't have any say so in those maps.
So the zoning board doesn't have any say so whether they approve it or disapprove it, right? Is what you're saying?
No, we have the authority to approve or disapprove this application.
Because of the flood issue.
We don't have the authority to dictate what FEMA tells us to be true. And you can show us videos that, you know, the property floods all the way up to, you know, up to your home. And you know, maybe in certain rains it may, but when FEMA tells us one thing, we have to follow the rules or the guidelines and the maps that FEMA gives us. We can't dictate otherwise.
Mark, can I jump in here? This is Ben Krebs, Planning Commission engineer and floodplain coordinator. Mark, you're correct. We'd follow their guidelines and everything. We would be interested. I would definitely be interested in those videos if Tommy could email them to me. My email's at the Planning Commission's. It's available. If there is something obviously wrong with if they have a date on.
You have a telephone number?
I do. It's our office telephone number, 867-3701.
867.
Yeah.
What is it?
Ben, if I could jump in, that's a landline number. You can't text photos or videos to that number.
Okay, man. See, I text those numbers to that number that was on the zoning board change. It may be what happened.
Yeah.
That's probably what happened, because that is only a landline. You can't text to that line. You can't.
All right, give me a number I can send them to.
Well, I'm not going to look at them right now. That we can at this point during this meeting, but I would love to look at them in the next couple weeks or whenever.
Yeah, okay. Give me your number so I can call you and get with you.
I did. I'm not going to give you a cell phone number on this video, though.
Okay. Hey, you know where I live, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Didn't I talk to you last week?
I've talked to you lately. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's all right. Nothing else you saw about the house. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Does Mrs. Zazicki have her hand back up again? I think. If she doesn't, unmute her.
Yeah, I did.
Yes, I do. And I want to know if my statement and request for postponement before approval is going to happen tonight with respect to now that Tommy has information that may affect your FEMA and the Dodd-Frank Act and what you can do and can't do in a floodplain, and also with our safety issues regarding the traffic flow coming through our subdivision. I truly believe that 100% of the homeowners in this villages of Falls Creek would agree with me that we would request a postponement on approval based on, we need to get a traffic flow. I mean, you know, Toyota hired 1,000 people 4 or 5 years ago. And when was the last traffic study done? You know, we really are in a beautiful subdivision with high-end homes. And I agree with Leslie as far as crime. And I'm, you know, everyone should have the ability to live where they want to live if they can afford it. But if I
actually ask Joe Kane. Joe, do you know, has there been a traffic study in that area done recently?
I looked and there was not.
No, is that some Mr. Kane? Give me a second.
We did there was a traffic study done across the street at the Woodland Estates zoning when that went through. There was a traffic study done for Falls Creek when the zone change occurred. And the developer did all the improvements at the entrances, put in turn lanes, you know, into and out of the subdivision. So I don't see, I mean, the traffic study's been done and the improvements have been done to meet the requirements based on the build out density. So any increased traffic in the area would be on city streets or state routes. State does counts periodically, and I know Woodland Estates did a traffic study and they did their improvements to their subdivision too. So they would be affected by area-wide traffic increases as well, but that doesn't mean they can't build out the lots.
Joe, can you tell me on Woodland Estates how far it is from the villages of Falls Creek? How far away are they?
Maybe a quarter mile.
Okay, and when was that traffic study done for them or for villages of Falls Creek? What year do you know? 2004, 2005?
Yeah, 2004, I would say for Falls Creek, and 2019.
That's 16 years ago, which means the I-75 northbound, southbound exit to Champion Way was not there. You know, the extra couple of thousand employees for Toyota.
The traffic study, what it looks at is the build out of the subdivision and what improvements the developer needs to make in the subdivision. You know, what entrances do they need to put in, and what improvements do they need to make at their entrances and along their frontage. I mean, area-wide traffic, that requires some improvements to area-wide roads. We can't put that on the developer of an individual subdivision.
Okay, so this new
these lots were already factored into their traffic study.
The new increase of homes, we will call them townhomes or houses attached to each other, and then single family, there is only one entrance going in and one entrance going out onto Falls Creek. So you're going to come down Falls Creek and you're going to go in, the only entrance in and the only entrance out. So they have 32 or however many, which is probably 60 or 70 cars coming in and out of one entrance onto Falls Creek. So then it goes out to Champion or it goes out to 25. So what the homeowners are requesting that we have a postponement so we can get and understand what flow of traffic is going to be into one cul-de-sac to go back to the river and come back.
So Joe,
out
I have a question for you. I know we've had opposition in the past of subdivisions being built. The one that comes to mind is Cane Run and what was that? Whispering Oaks, I think it was.
Winding Oaks.
Winding Oaks, thank you. Does the opposition, whether it be, let's say, Kathleen and some of these other residents, would they then have to pay for the traffic study? Because if I'm not mistaken, Winding Oaks, one of the ladies who was in opposition, she had paid for, sinkhole studies and traffic studies, and I forgot what other study she had. Is it up to these residents to pay for those studies?
They could pay for studies at the zone change stage. At this point, the overall neighborhood density has been approved. So as long as they build the roads in this section to our standards, and as long as they don't increase the number of units over what would trigger a second entrance, I mean, there's no study there's no study needed. I mean, there's only 35 lots on this road. I mean, the road can handle 35 lots.
Well, 35 lots with 2 cars each is 70 cars in and out at any given time during the day of one little cul-de-sac.
Well, traffic volume typically on a dwelling unit is 10 daily trips as average single family house. So 350, potentially 350 trips in 24-hour period coming out of this area. Spread out over 24 hours, the roads can handle that amount of traffic.
Okay. Again, the request for the Villages of Falls Creek homeowners is to postpone approval until we can understand the traffic flow going in and out of one street for 32 new units, and to also understand the flow from Champion Way to 25 and from 25 over to Champion Way.
Thank you. It looks like we have one more. Oh, Mr. Billings, did you want to speak?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, for the commission's perspective on this, the request by the owners to do a traffic study is not supported by the subdivision regulations at hand. There's nothing in the subdivision regulations that require a traffic study to be done. Number two, even if the owners did a traffic study, there's nothing that the commission could do to not approve this based on that traffic study. Number three, this application tonight isn't a surprise to them. They knew back in December we were going to come forward. They received a letter from my office more than a month ago that we were going to have a meeting and this was going to come forward. They received an official notice from you all from Brent, technically, regarding the hearing tonight. It wasn't like they got surprised by this, that they could have gone out and started to do their own things to come forward with evidence tonight, just like the pictures or the video or a traffic study. And so we would respectfully ask the commission to reject the request to postpone because they've had time to do these things. But even if they had time to do them, the commission can't not approve this based upon the thing they want to show you. With all due respect, you've got to follow the regulations, which the regulations don't allow or require traffic study for this plan. As Mr. Kane said, it's basically when you get a zone change, you require a traffic study. It's by right. The layouts may have to comply and you may have to do some other technical things, but a traffic study wouldn't prohibit this from being built out at some point with a total of, is it 338, Joe? I may have 336.
338, I believe.
Maybe the types of units have to be discussed, but that's outside of tonight. It's respectfully, I understand their concern, but it can't be a justification to not approve this plan.
Thank you, Attorney Billings. I seen Mr. Brookwicki's hand up. Did you want to speak, Mr. Brookwicki? If so, go ahead. If you don't mind, Matt, would you unmute Mr. Brookwicki?
This is Mrs. Brewer.
Hi, Mrs. Brookwicki.
And
if you would raise your right hand.
Oh, yep. Let's swear you in.
I have no testimony to give. He had contacted me. He's at work and wanted to give a statement, but he said, never mind. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, at least listening. Mr. Combs has his hand up. Brent?
Yeah, I just wanted to state one little thing is the current subdivision regulations require a second entrance when you reach 200 single family lots.
Thank you for clarifying that. I know Mr. Billings said 100 earlier and I didn't get a chance to correct him, and it is 200, Mr. Billings. So you're well below that number.
I apologize.
No, you're fine. I forgot to mention that I thought you had the wrong number, and thank you for Brent pointing that out. Appreciate that. Any other questions, comments by the commission, by the audience, by the applicant, the attorney? If not, let's discuss this, make a motion. I'm open for whatever you want to do.
Mr. Chairman, I understand all of the concerns all of these folks have brought forward tonight, but I need to remind them that this is done in phases, and the overall plan was approved years ago, and like Joe and several others have pointed out, the traffic was considered for the whole development, not just for that first phase. And so these new houses have already been considered in that traffic study. And Mr. Sagasser brought information up about the floodplain, and all of these houses are built above the floodplain. That's not to say that at times water might get up in those houses, but they're built above the floodplain. They're built legally. So, you know, I understand where he's coming from. Yeah, I'm sure his videos probably did show water up to the top of the fence posts. And that happens from time to time. But as long as the houses are built above the floodplain, that's all we can do. And we don't have any control over where that floodplain is. We can require that the houses are built above the floodplain. But if it gets wet from time to time, that happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions for the by the commission?
Let's say, Mark, that the one thing, I'm sure this is not our responsibility, but the state probably does need to conduct a traffic study at times. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess we're coming up on 6 schools located, and really 7 they're not very far apart if you go around the bypass over to Western and ECS and the new Great Crossing High School. There's all the schools are concentrated together, and traffic has not been that bad here recently, at least since last March. But
yeah, well, exactly. Well, I was going to say, I have a kid at the 8th grade Scott County Middle, and the traffic in that area twice a day is atrocious. And other than that, I mean, is it bad? No, but definitely when schools coming in or letting out, it's pretty brutal on that corner, no doubt.
The state's going to have to take a look at it. They're talking about building another school down at the intersection of Long Lick or what would be Champion Way and the new bypass. And traffic is definitely extra heavy in this area. I mean, it's also heavy over around around Walmart when Toyota is coming and going. And
oh, no doubt.
This is just a county that has we have a lot of cars on the road. I'm sure we're
only going to get busier by easily. I mean, what are we going to hit 100,000 people? They say by the year, is it 2030? I think.
But I think what the state will probably have to look at some point, especially the more that this subdivision is built out, there's going to have to be a possibility of a light at one of these entrances, but that's not our jurisdiction. That's for the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and we can't require it. I've learned that in the past. And the same way with that, if he has pictures that show that floodwater's way above, I mean, if you can show that it's that high, I guess somebody could forward those pictures to FEMA. But I would say good luck getting them to change the floodplain.
Well, I need probably a motion to. It's up to you. Well, I leave this up to the commission. I'm the chair.
Mr. Chair, one question for clarification is, did anyone have any comments or questions about my request to look at the averaging of those lot widths?
No, I think Brett mentioned the average and said they were within the guidelines. So I think I was okay with it unless any of the other commission had concerns or thoughts. I know Commissioner Smith had said that one particular lot. Let me look at it here real quick.
That's the last lot down.
Yeah, the furthest lot number 29A and B, the front end of it was very narrow, and I definitely noticed that as well. But to Brett Combs' point, if you take the average of all the lots, it makes up for that front entrance of lot 29A and B.
I was looking at the 80 foot at the building line, and I didn't know.
So again, if it's based on the average, I mean, a lot of the other ones are quite wide in comparison.
Well, the condition sets a minimum. They're asking to change that to average, but I would prefer to use a minimum. I mean, then we know actually what the
Are we saying that lot then would either need to be widened in the front, or some of the other lots more narrow to expand that lot a little bit?
Yeah, if it's not 80, I can't tell.
I know we struggle with, anytime you're on the end of a cul-de-sac, we always struggle with the front end of the lot being too narrow. I mean, anytime we've had it on a cul-de-sac. And that's why I was fairly okay with it, because most lots on a cul-de-sac are pie-shaped. You always have a narrow front end, and then the back end's, obnoxiously wider. And this is kind of holds true. And I need my glasses again, but it looks like the back end of this lot is 140 feet roughly on the back end, compared to, 40 feet on the front end maybe.
Brent, have a comment, or Nathan? I don't know if there's anything we can do to make all these meet a minimum, or are you looking to meet an average?
I think all the rest of them do meet the minimum, Mr. Smith.
I'm going to defer to Brent on the engineering stuff.
Mr. Combs?
I'm an attorney, not a smart person. I'll let the math guys do that.
Well, Steve, to your point, that lot wouldn't meet the 80-foot minimum. The others are like 86 to 87. So I think the applicant is requesting to use the word average. So you as a commissioner are going to have to decide whether you want to hold to Joe's recommendation of minimum, or to go with the applicant's request to use average.
Is there a reason that those lines were drawn the way they were? Is there some way to make that lot slightly wider at that point?
Well, I didn't look at, because I didn't realize Joe was going to ask that, I didn't look at it in great detail. That was originally part of the multifamily, and so it was drawn a little differently than the 2-unit single family attached. But what will happen basically is, if you all vote to hold to the minimum, then I've got to figure out how to make that different. That's the bottom line.
I think what would happen is we would, if you voted that's the minimum, when we come back with whatever that wide area is that's not tonight, I think that lot wouldn't otherwise qualify. We would just have to come back on that lot and seek some type of alternate plan or waiver or something. I mean, it would still be on this plat. It's just you can't build on it if you say 80-foot wide, because it doesn't meet the criteria.
And keep in mind, Steve, this is a preliminary subdivision plat approval. So they would have to, then if we do approve it as is, they would, to Attorney Billings' point and to Brent Combs' point, they would have to configure these lots to meet our minimum requirement then, and bring it back as a final.
If it's a minor concession, then for them, I would agree with Joe. Let's stick to the 60-foot minimum and the 80-foot minimum on the
duplexes.
Duplex lots.
Okay. Any other comments, questions for the commission? Otherwise, I'll.
Mark, we do have one additional question from the public.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Looks like Leslie Kane. Go ahead and unmute her, or if she has to unmute herself.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a statement that you keep saying that, this was approved back in the beginning, whenever it was 2004 or 3 or whatever. But I think it's my understanding that back then it was meant to be all single family homes. And now there's multiple apartment buildings, townhome buildings, multi-unit dwellings, and that changes how the, rules should be for the neighborhood.
Always.
Joe, do you want to comment to that?
Yeah, I was just referring, when I said it was approved back then, I was just referring to the traffic study. I mean, the traffic study took into account the build out of the entire subdivision at 338 units. That's kind of what I meant by that. So yeah, they are having to approve this layout in these duplexes. So they do have the ability to deny it, but I mean, I don't think they can deny it based on traffic.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Kane.
That's it.
Mr. Chairman, and look at the plan talking with Mr. Combs, I think the staff recommendation, we'd like the averaging better because there's that lot, but Mr. Combs says that we can deal with it with whatever we come back with that next area is. So it's on the plan. It just wouldn't be buildable right now, I guess, is what I think the implication of what Joe is saying is. So we just have to come back at that point and either include it as a partial amended plan or something for here. But for tonight, I think what Joe suggested we'll live with.
Thank you, Mr. Billings.
So what about the
comments?
What about lots 1, 2, and 3 of the single family on that cul-de-sac? They're not 60-foot wide.
My understanding is that the building line is not the property boundary line on the cul-de-sac. The building line is actually set back. And when you draw a line across the building line, Mr. Combs tells me that building line is actually meets that requirement.
Oh, so it's the building line, not the property line.
Yes.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mifflin. Okay, if there's no other comments, questions, I need some kind of motion to decline, postpone, whatever you want.
I'll make one more comment. Is if they continue to build the same housing product that they have there, I think it's one of the better products around. It's a nice. Their architectural standards and things in Falls Creek have been, I think, very good. And I'm not sure why everybody is so against continue to build a few more of that same product. But I hate to nitpick things completely to death, but it seems like this one gets picked on more than many. This development does.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for the comment. So I need a decision or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve PSP 20-21-04 with the.
It'd be 9 conditions because I think we.
With the 9 conditions with number 4, number 7 removed.
Correct. So I've got a motion by Mr. Mifflin.
Second.
And I had a second by, was that Mr. Stone?
Yes, fine. Yes.
I didn't hear who that was. I'm sorry. So we have a motion by Mr. Mifflin, a second by Mr. Stone. All in favor, say aye.
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 I don't know whether
Anybody opposed? Don't think we had any opposition, so no one opposed. And Mary Singer must have dropped off, unfortunately. I don't see her on here. Okay, so it's been approved. Thank you all, and I appreciate all the attendees and your time because it's been a long meeting. Next thing on the agenda is under other business. Mr. Billings and Mr. Smith, Joey and Doug, and you all know, make appointment with planning and zoning, get over there and sign the documents.
They'll come to Charlie's or Joe's office to sign the conditions.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Billings. Thank you, Brett and Smiths, and again, the community. Next thing on the business, other agenda, I should say, is other business. Joe, you probably want to do the presentation of the 21-22 draft budget.
Yeah.
I know for once, I think most everybody was there Monday. This is that Joe talked about on Monday. Really, the only changes were from Monday to today. I don't think there were any changes except for, I don't think we were going to give our attorney a raise. Walked away from the computer and he's not even paying attention.
I'm coming to your house, Mark.
Yeah, I hear you. So
Okay.
no, but all joking aside, I think Joe, there weren't any additional changes from Monday night, was there?
No, just,
So-
nope. So if y'all didn't have any questions or concerns, I would like to get a vote so I can forward this to the county, but it's not, they haven't asked for it yet, so it can wait for till next month as well if you'd like to wait, but
My only concern, but I think I can't remember if it was Mr. Mifflin, is we don't have anything budgeted for improvements or repairs, but because it is a county-owned building, if we do need repairs, probably not a remodel, but a repair, I think the county and or city, because it's, I guess, joint, would give us the money to repair it if need be. Let's say a flood or bad roof, leaky pipes or whatever. I mean, those are minimum.
yeah, I would
I'm
have to
talking-
go and make a special request to get that money if something did happen.
If there was a major need, but I mean,
Right.
yeah, that's what we have insurance for as well too. So if there's a flood or a roof that caves in, we'll make sure it takes. So I'm okay. I like the way it looks. Joe I touched base with Joe because he gave us the fiscal year budgets from 15 through this current year.
Mhm.
Gave us the budgets, but said that those budgets were always managed well year after year. Joe, next year I wouldn't mind seeing the budget numbers, but also maybe what we really spent. And we have to have two columns, an actual budget and then what we spent, or even instead of the budget, maybe putting the numbers that we've spent in the past year. So for advertising, assets, consulting, IT, technical support. So this way, when you have rolling numbers and show, okay, this is what we spent the last 6 years, in this case, it would be 6, then we know that you're budgeting based on the average of what you've done last 6 years. It helps. Because if you're saying, I'm going to write a budget based on what we budgeted last year, it doesn't tell me truly how much you spent, or maybe sometimes how much you didn't spend. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Supplies, you've got 2,000 for the last 7 years. Well, did you spend $2,000 every year for the last 6? Is 2,000 too high, or maybe sometimes not high enough? I mean, and it helps to actually have the actual numbers after the year has passed, so we have a true. So even I wouldn't even maybe even give us the budgetary numbers, but give us the actual numbers.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that next year.
And this way, give you an example, and I'm trying to remember. There was one number that jumped out. I seen. Of course, it's not going to jump out on me. Well, there was something on here that it jumped. It was pretty big. It was just one particular year that there was a big bump in number, and I don't know if it was IT.
No, the big bump is every 4 or 5 years, and we have to do the.
Well, there's that.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? They're under warranties. Like, for instance, we budgeted $6,500 the first 4 years. For whatever reason, 3 years ago, we only budgeted $4,000, and then we went back to $6,000. So if you gave us the true numbers, you can kind of show what we spent, whatever happened in 19 or 20 that we didn't maybe spent less on a warranty because, I don't know, maybe we bought the machine that year. Maybe that was the last year of the buyout or something.
Yeah.
And showed us the actual numbers, and then if we had questions based on the actual numbers, you can explain the reason we spent a lot less or a lot more. It could be, IT or warranties or whatever. That's a little easier to understand, even especially for a banker.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. That
But
makes
otherwise,
sense.
I mean, it looks good, Joe. I mean, you did a great job Monday explaining this. I'm comfortable with it, and I leave it up to the commission to vote on approving it tonight, and then I'll give my opinion or approval as needed. So do we have a motion to approve this tonight?
I would make that motion that we.
We have a motion by Mr. Smith. Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
Got a second by Mrs. Mizell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Anybody opposed? There you go, Joe. All done.
Okay.
Anything else for the good of the meeting? God, we went long today. I apologize. I was trying to reel everybody back in, and there were just a couple that I couldn't. So I apologize.
Joe, when are we due to? Is it 2 more years or 3 more years? Or can we? I know we went longer than that at one point before we did the.
We flew it in 19, so 3 more years.
3 more. Right.
March of 2019 is when we flew the county. Is that what you were referring to?
That's
Yeah,
what I was
I
referring
thought.
to.
Oh, you talking aerials?
Yeah,
Right.
aerials. We try to
Okay.
do them every 5 years, although growth hasn't been as, you know,
For now.
So it'll
as
be
crazy.
2024 is what you're saying?
Yeah, well, yeah, 2024.
And Steve, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not going to look, but I think you'll be off this board and so will I.
And the flights are getting cheaper from what I understand. So
That's good.
I mean, we talked about budgeting a fifth of the cost every year, but we've missed 2 years because they cut it out last year, and I didn't put it in this year. So,
And if you ever want a better view, just pull up Google Maps. They seem like they have better stuff than we do all the time.
They really do. They've got some great maps on there. I use that a lot too. So,
yeah,
Somebody actually flew in 2020 that some of that stuff shows up in there.
well, before we sign off, somebody needs to wake up David Vest, and then we can probably make an motion to adjourn.
might be frozen in
There,
the truck.
Mr. Vest. Oh, you're on mute, Dave. There you go.
Internet's going in and out.
Yeah. All right. Well, if we have nothing else, I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All right, got a motion. Have everybody have a good night. Thank you all. Sorry it went a little long.